hitting that live button. We should be rolling. It says going live. Going live. I think we're live now. Probably.
Thanks, so.
So, welcome everyone. This is On Just Restart. I am joined by Brandon from WhataboutNodnarb. His channel is linked in the description below. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good. Ready to talk some more Nintendo.
They're doing some deep diving today.
Yeah.
But basically, guys, for those watching, this is a Nintendo podcast that we try to do every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Heck, I went on a whole vacation between, in the space between last week's podcast and this one. I had a vacation. Still managed to have some videos come out. Some of them were quick little things, but
Yeah,
we did that. And we're still doing the Sunday night podcast. We're trying to be consistent with it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things to talk about every week. We don't want to miss it. There's some good stuff to talk about today. So what we are talking about today is Nintendo's E3 2021 plan. We don't know what that is. We're going to be speculating on it, if there even is an E3 plan. There's some information out there that I'll touch on that perhaps could shed some light on the issue. So we'll be talking about that, speculating what they could be doing, when we could be seeing all of this. And obviously, as Nintendo fans, you may find some of that to be very exciting. Potentially Zelda, potentially Metroid, potentially Donkey Kong, or other things. So we'll be getting to that, talking about that throughout the night. But there's another thing we're going to be talking about as well, and that is this recent rumor regarding Nvidia, the manufacturer, the producer for the hardware of the Nintendo Switch. They are partnered with Nintendo, and they will supposedly, this is a rumor, but this rumor is suggesting that they'll be ending production for the Tegra X1. That is the chip that is powering the OG Switch, the Switch version 2, and also the Switch Lite.
Yeah, all the current Switches.
All the current Switches out on the market right now. So that could have some pretty vast implications for what's to come. Last week we talked about the whole Bloomberg report and the Switch Plus Pro potentially coming out. But there have been other rumors and things that have come out in this past week that are surrounding all of this, including what I just mentioned. So we're getting to that as well.
There's a bunch of stuff coming out.
Yeah, I mean, for example, Doctray81, he spotted a, I forget where it was, and I'll reference the article later when we talk about it. But basically, he found Samsung talking about how they want to position their OLED screens to be functioning a whole bunch of different things, including laptops and phones and cars and things, but they also mentioned gaming consoles. So when you factor that in with the Bloomberg report of Nintendo having plans to come out with a OLED powered Samsung Switch by the end of the year, by holiday 2021, that will have 4K functionality on the television, and you also consider this other rumor that may be suggesting that the current Switches may be ending production, at least from the Nvidia side of things. All of those things together seem to be painting a very interesting picture. And before we jump, we're gonna, this is kind of, me just shedding some brain waves, right, to start things off, but I just want to say that even if you're not necessarily interested in the Switch Pro, or whatever it's going to be called, I feel like knowing what's going to happen with it is still interesting for you, because if there's a Switch Pro and it comes out for holiday 2021, do you know what that means? That means that pretty much certainly we'll be seeing Breath of the Wild 2 come out alongside of it. Obviously not 100%, but that would be the implication. If a Switch Pro doesn't come out this year, then you would think that Nintendo might save that, similar to how we sort of saw Breath of the Wild come out March of 2017 along with the Nintendo Switch. It was an interesting little situation with that. So there are implications here. It kind of suggests what Nintendo has planned for the lineup and such, and the different games, and also whether we're, depending on when we see the Switch Pro, that could also sort of suggest when we see the next generation of Nintendo, or depending on how they handle that. So regardless of where you stand on whether you want a new system or not, or a revision, there are things that can kind of suggest what may be coming. So I still think it's relevant for every Nintendo fan that likes to watch these sorts of things. So yeah, that's what we'll be focusing on today. I think it's gonna cover a lot, and obviously if you guys have any questions or points you want to bring up in the chat, we will get to that as well. It doesn't have to pertain to the topics, so feel free to just go all out here, but that's the plan for tonight.
Oh yeah, let's go.
Yeah, let's do it. So let's
just been a kind of just real quick make a note.
Yeah.
Like, there's just been so much Switch Pro stuff that's like actual hard evidence because we've been hearing things about like a new model of the Switch for a while, which I suspect is because Nintendo's started working on a new model of the Switch very shortly after the Switch came out. I imagine they probably actually had plans while the Switch was coming out that they couldn't get out in the original model. So that's probably where a lot of those rumors are coming from. But those were like so small, like very vague. Nothing really came of them. Like, this is so much more concrete rumors that corroborate each other, and there seems to be a lot more coming out, like, right now. Like, just within the past couple weeks, it just started, like, just really slamming it with the information on the Switch Pro.
Well, if the Bloomberg report is true, manufacturing for these screens will start this summer. So, you know, things are supposedly happening. And we have seen reports that developers are supposedly being told to start preparing their games for 4K on Switch. So there's a lot of smoke here. And where there's smoke, there's likely fire. So yeah, there's potentially things going on. I believe so. A lot of people believe so. Absolutely. It seems a lot stronger now than it was in the past. But let's check in with the chat here before we jump into the swing of things. Let's see here. Javier Vasquez. Guys, can you believe that Conrad of the channel Commonwealth Realm still believes Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity is canon, despite the plot holes? I can't understand. Well, I actually like Commonwealth Realm, and I might have to disagree with you here, Javier, because
I'm pretty sure it is like canon.
Right. Now, I think, but it's important to understand something here. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, from what I understand, is canon because the Zelda team worked closely with Koei Tecmo to make this game. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be canon, but when the Zelda team is working on this particular project, that suggests it'll be canon. We'll see how things pan out. We don't know for sure yet. But
if Triforce Heroes can be canon about a game where Link literally just changes costumes as his like whole universe, I'm pretty sure this game's canon. Considering it actually gives actual reasons why the story has changed.
Sure, but the other thing to understand here, though, is that while it may be canon, that doesn't mean it has a strong influence with the core story for the mainline Zelda games either, right? This is more of a diversion. Now, I don't want to spoil too much, but they basically tell you this at the very beginning of the game. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity takes place in a different, separate timeline. So basically, pretty much everything that happens here is null and void. Could they theoretically tie in this game to Breath of the Wild 2? They could. But it doesn't really matter. It takes place in a separate timeline. So even if it's canon, it's not like necessarily that big of a deal. That all said, we did talk about on this channel multiple times how Age of Calamity could potentially tease some things for Breath of the Wild 2. We won't actually know what that is until it happens, but we've talked about them before. There's a number of possibilities here. It could at least be the Zelda team suggesting some ideas and concepts that they're currently working on to Koei Tecmo that they may sort of insert into their game that could, you know, be a little bit of a bridging of concepts to the next big Zelda game. But we'll see how things pan out. We don't actually know. Let's see here. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add to that, Brandon.
No, just like, in short, I'm pretty sure it is actually canon. It just doesn't really affect anything. Any other universe. I mean, pretty much like Triforce Heroes. Doesn't really affect anything else, but it's technically still canon. Yeah.
Hello there, Tyler. Hello there, Ronnie Fazio. David Haney, hello. Birdman, good evening. Freddy68, Andre, what role do you think the Divine Beast will have in Breath of the Wild 2? Potentially no role. So, in the sequel trailer, the only piece of footage we have of the game, there is zero signs of any Sheikah technology. So,
it's very true.
I'm under the impression that this game is taking place a couple years after the initial Breath of the Wild. Still not too long after. Like, Link and Zelda still look pretty much the same age. Maybe instead of being 18, they're like 20, 21. But, you know, they're still young adults, right? But that's enough time for them to sort of get rid of the Sheikah technology, or maybe something happens where the Sheikah technology sort of goes back underground. My perspective is go on, Brandon.
At the end of Breath of the Wild, if you get the true ending, you get that special cutscene with Zelda, and she does mention that the divine beast Varuta, or Varudin, I think it's Varuta, isn't working. The elephant one for Zora's Domain. It's not working, so they're going and trying to figure out what's going on with that. Like, that's the last thing you see them doing in Breath of the Wild, is going to figure out what's up with the divine beast. So I assume it probably will have some sort of role, but I feel like its role might be that it doesn't have a role. And that's its whole role.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't work, so that's kind of its role in the story, is that it doesn't have one.
I mean, it could be... It's inactive for some reason, right? It could be the inciting incident, right? Like, the fact that it's not working, Link until they go exploring, trying to figure things out. Maybe a lot of these things do go underground, right? And they're like, okay, why do these things go underground? The Sheikah technology is so useful to us, so they go underground.
It came from underground, right?
Right. So
in
they
go first place.
Exactly. So they go underground exploring, trying to figure out the source of this issue, and then they chance upon this tomb of Ganondorf, and then that sets everything in motion that we see in the trailer.
Yeah, it definitely could be.
Yeah. Now, it's possible that there still could be other implications of this Sheikah technology. Maybe by the end of the game they do reactivate it and it is part of the world, and maybe throughout the game you do sort of reactivate different pieces of it, so it becomes another part of the world as you explore. But maybe. At least at the beginning of the game it seems like there won't be any Sheikah technology, but like to your point, Brandon, it could just be like that inciting incident, so we'll see.
Yep.
Let's see here, I got a few more questions. Hello, Flippin' Beverly Carter, hello. Taker 610. I went into Zelda study in Breath of the Wild and didn't see no Terraco on any shelves. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't...
Yeah, it's technically not there in the base game. I mean, I don't think it would be anyway.
Well, that's the point, because when Zelda, the time when Terraco goes back in time is before the events of Breath of the Wild. So when you're exploring Zelda's study, that moment where Terraco went to the past already happened. Terraco went into the past in the past. Like, all of the events that take place in Age of Calamity are before the 100-year gap. It happens when Zelda is fending off the Guardians when Link has collapsed. That's before the 100-year gap. And that's in the future. I know it's confusing because it's like, oh, he goes back in time, but he only goes back in time like maybe a few months or something, not years. So it's entirely separate there. I haven't analyzed every single little piece. Maybe there's other things there that might be sort of plot holes. Potentially, but we've seen plot holes or continuity errors throughout mainline Zelda games. Yeah. So, I wouldn't necessarily put too much.
You want to talk about plot holes? Try arguing with people about which part of the timeline Breath of the Wild belongs in.
Well, actually, I was talking to a friend earlier, and they suggested something that I found to be quite fascinating. And I didn't even talk to them about it later, because they told me something, and I thought about it, and then after I stopped talking to them, my brain sort of continued on with the idea.
Right.
So basically, because I was telling them how I still have this plan to talk about, like in a more focused, specific video on sort of Loftwings and other creatures coming into Breath of the Wild 2. And they suggested to me that Loftwings could potentially have evolved into Rito. To which I responded, well, technically, at least in the Wind Waker, Zora is evolved into Rito. But I gotta continue thinking. The Rito we see in Breath of the Wild are of a different style and design. And there are actually different kinds of Zora as well. So hypothetically speaking, it's possible that the Rito we see in Breath of the Wild are a different kind of Rito, a different variant. Perhaps instead of Zora evolving into Rito, because we see Zora in Breath of the Wild, right? So that suggests it can't really be the Wind Waker side of the timeline, right? That it's something else, and maybe Loft Wings became Rito instead. You know, like maybe there's something there. I would like to think that Loft Wings are a separate thing,
fact
but
that just consider evolution in real life. It's not like necessarily the older species dies. It doesn't always die out completely.
It's a
or it doesn't always. Yeah, they diverge. So there can be Rito or Zora that evolved into Rito, and then Zora that still stayed Zora.
Yeah. So anyway, just something I've been thinking about. You know, potentially there could be a lot of different more species that we see in Breath of the Wild too, because at least before Ganondorf resurrects himself, there is going to be some level of peace for a period, and with that peace, with the calamity gone for at least a little while, some species or peoples or creatures that have been in hiding or at least left that mainland of Hyrule could be returning, since it's more of a habitable environment now.
There's some monsters literally everywhere, and you know, giant pools of toxic goop.
Yeah. Then less of that, hopefully. Moving on, though. Ice Sonic added me. I'm just worried that us base Switch users get left behind is all I can take away from the Switch Pro. I hope we can still play games across the board. So, I don't think this is a next-generation system. That's not what's being suggested from everything we've seen and heard. I don't think there's going to be that kind of divide. The Switch is still selling really well right now. There's really no fiscal business reason at all for Nintendo to abandon this huge install base that buys more games than any other previous install base for any other system. This is potentially the most profitable actual fan base and install base we've seen for any game console ever, at least in terms of how efficient it is with the number it is. I don't think Nintendo's going to abandon the system anytime soon. I don't think they're going to abandon all the people who have Switch currently. There's way too much money there.
Definitely not.
I think... Well, go on.
Let's put it this way. Like, do you see how long they supported the 3DS?
Mm-hmm.
For literally no reason.
Right.
They're definitely going to support the Switch.
Yeah.
It's already sold better than the 3DS.
The Switch is more successful than the 3DS. The Switch is gonna perform far better than the 3DS, and look at how Nintendo milked that cow. So I wouldn't be worried. Now, I'm not gonna say there isn't any level of concern, because there are a few things to consider. One, there could be some exclusives. That is a possibility. I don't think there's gonna be a lot of them. I think, my opinion is that there won't be any Nintendo exclusives.
I agree. That's
most people seem to think that way, right? But it's not out of the question. But what we are hearing from some credible people, like for example, Nate Drake or Nate the Hate, depending on which platform you're hearing him out on, and he's an insider. He's been right about a lot of things. He's hearing that there will be some exclusives. I'm not saying there'll be major exclusives, but some exclusives, but that's for third-party stuff. Yeah. So, okay. Some third-party games, that's fine. If they can't even run on the base Switch anyway, that's fine. If this means we can get Resident Evil Village on Nintendo Switch in 4K, dude, that'd be amazing. I'd be very excited for that. And there's no way it's going to reasonably want to run on base Switch anyway, so you're not really losing out on anything. But
I'd be shocked if Resident Evil 8 or Village could run on a Switch Pro. That's like pushing next-gen stuff.
Yeah, no, I don't believe it. But if you think of it from a perspective,
maybe they can work like the Xbox One version down.
Yeah, maybe they do that, and it's kind of like you run it like at 480p or something, right? In handheld mode, and then because of DLSS, you can get it to like 1440p or something on Switch Pro. You know, like it's. I'm not a very like a developer. I don't understand all the nuance of this. But the point is, there is some rumors suggesting that some exclusives will be there, but it seems like it'll just be the occasional third-party game that wouldn't even be able to run on Switch.
If we look at the new 3DS, the only Nintendo games that were on there was like 1 or 2, and that was it. Namely, the one I remember is Xenoblade Chronicles 3D. The only ones that either Nintendo or third parties put on the new 3DS exclusively were games that just wouldn't run on the base 3DS. Like, there's no way Xenoblade Chronicles 3D would have run on the base 3DS. At least not well enough to be, like, playable. It would not have been a good experience.
Yeah.
There's games like the original Hyrule Warriors was horrible in the base 3DS. And then there's games like there was a 3DS port of which Switch version? Which Warriors game? There was the 3DS version of one of the Switch Warriors games. I think it was Fire Emblem Warriors?
No, the Hyrule Warriors was on 3DS and Switch.
No, I know, but there was one that was also on the Switch that was brought to the 3DS exclusively. I forget which one it was. There is a 3DS exclusive Warriors game on the.
But is it actually?
3DS. I think other than Hyrule Warriors, which I think works on both.
I'm not sure. There weren't many exclusives.
Either way, yeah, there were very, very few, and it was only games that like would never run.
Yeah, and I think Nintendo's not going to really do that anymore. But this does raise the other issue potential issue I want to get to though. A lot of games did run very poorly on the base 3DS. And everyone loves to harp on this whole idea that Nintendo needs to improve the base. They need to sort of upgrade so they can have a system that can run current gen games or new gen games, whatever you want to call it. But the reality of the situation is that the money is coming from the current install base, which is on the original Switch, which is over 80 million and probably will be over 100 million. Sure, this new Switch may continue to sell, and Nintendo may phase out the old Switch and make this like the new 3DS of this generation, and it will sell a lot. It will sell more than like a premium system. It'll be sold like, maybe another 30, 40 million, maybe, right? And that'll be great, but the main install base is still going to be with the base Switch. So the fear is that a lot of games are going to be optimized for Switch Pro or Switch Plus, and a lot of the games all the games are just not going to run well on the base Switch. That is a fear. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I do think it's going to happen. I'm not saying everything is going to run poorly, but there probably is going to be a few things that come out that will be poorly optimized for the base Switch.
If you look at literally any of the consoles that have gotten new versions, the new 3DS, third-party games run terribly on the 3DS after that. They kind of ran terribly before then, too. And then you look at the Xbox One X, the PS4 Pro. Games on the original Xbox One are horrible. Third-party games. There are some good ones, for sure. There are good ones, but there's also, like, a lot of ones that run really bad.
The most horrendous situation is Cyberpunk 77, right?
Yeah,
2077.
Yeah.
They advertised the PC version of the game. They held back reviews for the base PS4 and Xbox One of the game before it came out, or until after it came out, which was just a horrendous thing. Basically, they lied to consumers, or misled consumers, and people bought a game that was not running at all, or very, very poorly. So I don't think that's gonna happen.
No, not to that extent.
But it sort of highlights the issue here. Developers may optimize their games very well for Switch Plus, and then the base Switch is just going to run like trash. Like, that's possible, but I'll also say that I think it would be a little foolish to do that because the money's still coming from the base Switch and the Switch Lite. That's where most people are going to be playing these games from. So my impression is that at least Nintendo games will run fine enough. There will be games that will look and run better on Switch Plus. That will be the point, right? But games will still ultimately be playable and still run fine. Right. I'm not too concerned about that. There is some concern, just not a lot.
There's a wrinkle I have just figured out that kind of changes some of my perspective on it. It depends on what they want to do with this Switch Pro. If they are going with what the rumor states and what we've seen from like leaked or the data mined chipsets and stuff like that, it seems like DLSS might be the biggest difference between the original and this one. There will probably be also GPU upgrades and CPU upgrades, but they won't be like so massive. Like the main selling point of this, I think, is going to be running games at 4K with DLSS,
Yeah.
So, since DLSS is simply a technique that doesn't...
But it has to be something that's designed around the actual chip or hardware of the system, so they can't just implement this on the base Switch.
No, they can't. Well, DLSS, no. Listen, let me finish.
Okay.
So the thing is, you make a game for the base Switch, right? I think this is how developers will do it. And I think Nintendo will do this too. They make a game for the base Switch, you optimize that. The only real difference between the Switch Pro and the regular Switch is maybe it's a slight bit more RAM, maybe some slight more CPU speeds, okay. But that's not going to add anything to the game. See, so like say on the base Switch it runs at 30, and on the Switch Pro it runs at 60 with higher resolution due to DLSS. Neither of those are things you have to actually go in and make new assets for. You don't have to make new textures, new models, new anything. All you have to do is go in and optimize to make it run how you want. You don't have to really change anything. So they can make a game for the base Switch, maybe when they go for the Switch Pro, and then they make it run really well on the base Switch, right? And then they look at the Switch Pro, they go, okay, we can improve textures here, maybe the lighting's improved a little bit here, model quality, okay, and then with DLSS, boom, that's our Switch Pro version. That way, you got the base Switch isn't really that much worse. It's mostly resolution, maybe a little bit other things. Maybe there's a 60 FPS mode in the Pro version or something like that. But the models themselves are the same. So there's much less work. You don't get that crappy base Switch version, and you get a big boost for those who want the Switch Pro as well.
Seems like a good deal to me. Maybe. But let's continue on the chat here, and then we'll actually jump to the discussion. We've got a few more minutes left for topics here. Let's see. I might speed through these, so bear with me, guys. Let's see here. Hello there, Super Chris. Thank you for modding. Tegra 610 provided a super chat. Thank you very much, Taker. Light. New 6-inch OLED, new chip, hybrid, 7 OLED, new chip, and 4K DLSS docked. Breath of the Wild 2 will have new and current gen versions. New 3D Mario will be Pro only. Huh.
I doubt we'll get anything for like a light new. I just doubt that would have a like audience.
Yeah,
would buy that.
I'll say that if Nvidia's gonna stop manufacturing the Tegra X1, eventually Nintendo probably will want to come out with a new version of the Lite as well. But they could have a lot sort of stocked up of Tegra X1s for the Lite, so they may have some time to do that. Maybe that's something we see come out next year.
Fair.
But in terms of an exclusive Mario game, I don't see that. I'd be very surprised. Very surprised.
I'm pretty sure Nintendo would never do anything like that.
Yes, I'm gonna say no on that one, but we'll see what happens. Let's see here. Ronnie Fazio. I could see Capcom porting Resident Evil 7 to the Switch Plus. They released a cloud version in Japan for base, but couldn't do it in the West. What are your thoughts? Yeah, maybe that's something they could do. I mean, to your point, they have expressed an interest on getting Resident Evil on the Switch. So, you know, if they can get like the newer Resident Evils on Switch Plus and maybe have cloud versions here in the West for base Switch owners, that's something. If it's not something that was able to come onto Switch at all anyway, then, you know, for sure, I think that would be fine, and there would be another reason to buy a Switch Plus.
I definitely think it's possible. I mean, RE7 is on the RE engine, which now works on the Switch, and it's I mean, when you compare to like Village, it's a lot less demanding, so I imagine that it could run on the Switch Pro pretty well.
Yeah. I see Taker here saying you gotta release a patch at least for DLSS.
Yes, you do.
I've just heard from some people that you basically have to have an entirely, like, the way that Tegra X1 is designed for the Switch. And keep in mind, I'm not a super tech-savvy person, but from what I've heard of supposedly tech-savvy people, that's just not, like, you need to redesign some things for that to work. Which I think might be go beyond a patch. I mean, maybe there's some level of AI of upscaling they can do, but to get the full effects of DLSS 2.0, they'll have to change things on a hardware level.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. But let's jump into the topics here. So, Brandon, which one do you want to cover first? Do you want to talk about Nintendo's E3 2021 plan, or do you want to talk about this whole situation surrounding Switch Plus and the Tegra X1 ending production and all of these other rumors surrounding it.
No,
they tie into each other.
We've been talking Switch Pro, so let's just keep going.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's do that. So we'll save the Nintendo E3 stuff for the second half of the discussion, guys. All right, makes perfect sense. So there's a lot of different things I want to sort of tackle here, but I guess, Brandon, I'll just ask you. We've already been touching on it, but when you factor in the Bloomberg report, which says 7-inch OLED screen, system coming out by holiday 2021, 4K capabilities when docked. That's what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And then you factor in this rumor of it all sort of production ending. And then you factor in that we've seen that Samsung wants to get OLED screens for gaming consoles. Do you think that this is a legit thing? Do you think this is all smoke leading to a fire? Do you think we're going to see a Switch revision with 4K capabilities this year?
I think we will. I do think so. I think there's just too much smoke. We never saw this kind of stuff when we were talking about the Switch Pro before. It was always just like random little things like, oh, it's gonna do 4K or something, I guess. And it's gonna be real powerful, guys. Trust me. Like, that was all we heard. It was just like, it's gonna be powerful, it's gonna do 4K. Maybe it will be a docked only thing, like a home console only. But we never heard anything like concrete. It was never like information. It was just like, oh yeah, Switch Pro's coming, I guess. Like, this is actual stuff. We're getting some concrete things that are corroborating with sources that aren't, directly correlated together. So, it just seems like too much coming from too many different places that aren't associated with each other. So it's not like they can corroborate. It's not like they're working together to try to fool us.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. But, I mean, it is an interesting point that you raised, though, because in the past we have gotten rumors, though, right? Even though it seems more prevalent now, we have gotten rumors like this in the past, and they haven't quite come to fruition in the way we expected them to, which, leads to confusion, because will we get exactly what we're expecting? I'm not sure we will. I think that the interesting thing about getting this kind of information before something is announced and made public, we don't know every detail here. We're not seeing every detail. Not to mention, this is all information we're getting before it's been finalized. So that means plans can change. So whatever it is that these insiders are hearing, it might not be quite what they're suggesting once it's finally finalized and announced. So that can lead to confusion. I mean, when we go to 2019, there were 2 revisions that came out. We had information suggesting that for a while. It came to pass. Now, there was also talk of a Switch Pro. That didn't amount in 2019. It may be the case that we were simply hearing about Nintendo starting to work on some plans for it, but it wasn't actually a thing until hopefully this year, right? So there's that to consider. But there's another kind of curveball here that I want to throw at you, Brandon. So there's been some speculation that there's actually 2 revisions coming. And it's speculation, right? I wouldn't say that there's like a lot of big rumors, but a lot of insiders are sort of talking about this idea that this year what we're going to get is actually more of a Switch XL. And that early next year, to end the fiscal year, we actually get the Switch Pro. What do you make of that?
I guess it's possible. We do have 2 Switch SKUs like that. We don't know what they are at the moment in the deadline.
Yeah, that's correct.
Though I would have thought that would have just possibly been like the Switch Pro, then the Switch Pro dev kit. Like maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to say if that's what that is or not. It could definitely be 2 completely different SKUs.
Maybe one's a dock and one's just a Switch.
Possibly.
Because if we don't know if this dock, maybe the Switch Pro has like innards inside the dock, hardware.
Maybe, but it didn't seem like that because it was I think it was an X1 based chipset.
Okay. Okay.
I imagine. I don't know though.
But that's also
it's really
like
hard.
that's a data mine from a while ago. Nintendo playing around with ideas, just trying to get some.
In a long time.
Exactly, they're just trying to get preliminary support in there. Whatever it is, isn't necessarily what it's going to be once it finally comes to market.
Very true.
Especially if it is true that the Tegra X1s are going to be done soon.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I could. Well, if they are going to be done soon, then what's the point of this Switch XL? I don't see why the Switch XL would be a thing. I'm just saying. Unless it's meant to literally just completely replace the original Switch, what's the point of it? Like it's sure you might be able to get like an extra inch to the screen or so, which would be nice. But it's that's your selling point. Like the Switch screen, it can't be that much bigger. It's not like the 3DS where it was just like twice the size or more.
Yeah.
You know, it's not gonna be that much bigger.
I'll tell you that I'm biased because I think if the speculation here is true and we're getting 2 revisions in the vein of what we're discussing, that would then suggest that we don't maybe see Breath of the Wild 2 this year, because I think Breath of the Wild 2 is something you have come out alongside this 4K Pro kind of system, you know, which to me I don't want to see. I want Breath of the Wild 2 to come out for this holiday, so I'm a little bit biased there. I just want to put that on the open and make that clear, because, you know, I mean, I think everyone that talks about these things, whenever you're listening to any sort of YouTuber or insider or a leaker or any sort of gaming analyst, whatever you want to call it, right, journalist, everyone's biased, right? So I just want to make it clear that where my bias is. Like, I want the Switch Pro and Breath of the Wild 2 to come out for this holiday. I think there's a lot of reason to think there is, right? If you guys have been watching my videos, I feel like I've built a pretty compelling argument for that. But that doesn't mean it can't go the other way, right? My perspective is that while I could see Nintendo releasing 2 different revisions within a similar the same window, right? They did it in 2019, technically. I could see them doing something like that again. But the interesting thing about 2019, though, they only advertised and marketed one. The other one was just kind of phasing out the original Switch for a slightly better battery one, with it had a red boxing instead of like the white and red boxing of the original. It wasn't
cheaper
advertised
to produce, and it had better battery life. Right.
So if anything, this OLED style of screen could potentially be something along those lines. Now, given that it would be a bigger screen, it would be it would be a little bit louder than a quiet revision, I suppose. But it might not have that big of a marketing push. So conceivably, they could do both within the same sort of window, I would say.
I'm gonna say I don't think that's happening. I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't see the point of a Switch XL, and I don't see the point of making it just the new standard Switch either. I don't know. Maybe it's just easy. The only reason I could see this happening is if it's just easier for them to produce both that way. Like they have the Switch Pro and the Switch using the same screen. Like maybe that's easier for them. I don't know.
I mean, definitely this Samsung OLED screen thing is something that's going to be easier for Nintendo to do. Like it's going to be a better screen, but it's also going to be cheaper for them to make. It's, you know, these revisions are in part not just so they can sell a new system, but it's also because they're redesigning their system so it's easier for them to make, it's cheaper to make, so they save money, right? They kind of fix their profit margins a little bit.
As hardware fades out, the older hardware stops being made, and so therefore it's more expensive, even though it's worse. Yeah. Which, I mean, if the Switch ends up having like an 8-year life cycle, the amount that this happens with mobile technology, I imagine this will be pretty common. I imagine this will be common for the Switch 2 as well.
Yeah, I mean, I could see Nintendo basically sort of updating the Switch like every 2 years to some extent, right? Like you had Switch 2017, Switch Lite 2019, maybe Switch Plus 2021, and then maybe in 2023, you know, they have another Switch variant that comes out. I'm not saying it'll be Switch Plus, although I'd like to think by that point we have the next generation. Yeah.
Switch Super Pro.
I feel like by 2023 we have the next generation Switch, or maybe 2024. but they also maybe have a cheaper Switch model come out for the Switch 1, so like because they kind of have both running at the same time. It's gonna they're gonna like slowly transition here. I see Switch Plus or whatever we're hearing about from Bloomberg. I see that as kind of like a new 3DS sort of thing, where yes, it's better. Yes, it's gonna have some nice features that improve your experience, but it's ultimately gonna be marketed as the primary model. Like they'll slowly phase out the base Switch, and this will become the primary model. And that's just how it's going to be.
From the way the rumors are, and I always suspected that this was a distinct possibility.
Yeah, that's why this rumor of production ending is so important, because it does lend towards that idea that this Switch Pro is going to be more of a not just like, oh, this is a deluxe version, but rather this is the definitive version that you will get moving forward.
Right. Maybe we should go hard on that aspect then.
Yeah.
Talk more about that. Go over those rumors.
Which part? Just in the sense that it'll...
just all the stuff that is talking about the Tegra X1's production, because we never actually went and like talked about what was all that. We like mentioned that somebody said like it was a thing. Sure.
So
we never actually went over it.
Let me kind of just read this from Game Reactor. This is where the report's coming from. So let's see if it pops up here. Okay, I think it should be visible soon. So this is from Game Reactor. News and rumors about the Nintendo Switch iteration have been developing quickly. Bloomberg is reporting a deal between Nintendo and Samsung on rigid OLED panels. While checking the veracity of the rumors, a person with knowledge in the matter told Game Reactor that Nvidia is halting the production of the system on a chip powering the Nintendo Switch this year. Both the regular model and smaller, cheaper Switch Lite feature the latest version of Nvidia Tegra X1 Mariko. The source told Game Reactor that Nvidia plans to stop producing the processor in 2021, but did not elaborate further on what comes next or what may happen with current versions of the hardware. So, I mean, that's the basic information there. They kind of just go on to talk about pro rumors.
I mean, if with the way that the Switch is selling, they don't have like a lot of extra stock, I imagine. Like probably maybe 5 million units, I'd imagine, extra, just kind of sitting around. Whether that be in warehouses or on store shelves. Something like that, 5 to 10 million units extra, I'd imagine. And if you just stop production, with how the Switch has been selling like 20 million plus units a year, you're gonna run out very quickly of extra stock. So they have to, assuming this is real, they have to have some kind of plan to either use a new chipset or go with this Switch Pro as the new model.
Yeah, what I would like to think what's going on, again, speculation, we don't really know, but what sort of makes sense to me is that the Bloomberg report is right. And by this holiday, we will see a Switch Plus, a revision come out with that Samsung 720 OLED screen. And that will be for this new version. That'll be kind of like a new 3DS. It will have 4K capabilities. It will be, it'll be an enhanced Switch. But ultimately, Nintendo's plan will be to phase out the older Switch and have that be the main version.
Right.
And all of the Tegra X1s that Nintendo currently has in inventory, they will save those for Switch Lites. They will produce a Switch Lite for a while more. But perhaps next year, we start hearing rumors. Maybe we can start hearing about them this year. But point is, eventually, if they're going to run out of that, they're going to have to replace the more portable version of the Switch as well, right? So then they have another revision a year or so after the release of Switch Plus that's replacing the portable Switch Lite, which would be 3 years after the release for that system, which I think is enough time to replace the more mobile version. And I mean, that makes sense.
Especially if it's more of a soft revision.
Right.
I imagine it would be like maybe they use the new chip. I imagine it would be like a normal Switch situation. It's just a quiet revision. It's a new chipset, so maybe it's more efficient. You get better battery life there, and that's about it.
I mean, let's say this new Switch we're talking about comes out this year. It's called Switch Plus, as I've been hoping and sort of predicting, right? Maybe they just call a new Switch Lite, they just call it Switch Lite Plus, right? It's a very kind of simple thing. Just add a plus there and everyone gets it, Maybe that version.
I imagine it would be more of a quiet, though, because I don't think they'll up the power. I think just the battery life.
Yeah,
They
I
wanna
mean,
keep that
I
separate
understand
from
your
the
point
Switch
there,
Pro.
but maybe it also has a smaller OLED screen, right? So it technically has a better screen, and it's also, yeah, it has better battery.
They might be able to fit that bigger screen on there. To be honest, there's even with the Switch Lite, there's a bit of a bezel, so possibly.
Whoa, that'd be kind of crazy.
That's the only reason I could see them actually not just doing a soft revision, you know?
I don't know if it'll just fit on the same exact mold, but
I wouldn't think so. No, that wouldn't be possible.
hear you. I mean, I hear you on the idea, though. Either way, I think we're kind of in agreement, though, that if it's true, if this rumor is true, and production is ending for the Tegra X1, they're gonna eventually have to replace the Switch Lite as well. They just have to. Yeah. It doesn't have to happen immediately because they probably have a whole bunch of chips in stock and inventory, right? But eventually they'll have to do that. Yeah, that makes sense. But I mean, this kind of path is what makes the most sense to me. I mean, I understand there are some people out there that think we're gonna get 2 revisions in the near future. I'm not saying it's out of the question. We have seen Nintendo do things like this in the past, but to me, I really feel like what they want to get out there is just something like this, like a Pro that is going to be a nice hot holiday item to push a big game like Breath of the Wild through. That's what makes sense to me. I have heard some pushback though, because there is this issue going on right now with the chip. It's there's a semiconductor issue or something like that. And I'm not gonna act like I understand all of this in full detail, but basically the pandemic exacerbated this issue, and there was a lot more people buying hardware, and there was new iPhones and 5G technology, and basically because of all these different things, there is a shortage of the technology needed to build all of this new hardware for different computers and such, right? When I say computers, I mean hardware for phones, hardware for gaming systems, hardware for laptops, hardware for computers, hardware for cars. Basically, any sort of technology, some sort of computer, there's shortages for that technology. This is very layman terms. Again, I'm not a huge tech head. But because of this issue, this big issue, there is a lot of doubt that Nintendo can push out a brand new Switch revision for the holiday. Maybe that's the case. We are still going to be feeling the effects of the pandemic for a little while longer. My belief, though, is that Nintendo will still get something out for the holiday. I feel like we're already seeing Nintendo return to a bit of a norm. Obviously, it's not entirely normalized, but just looking at how they've been handling this year in terms of their marketing, it seems a lot more like previous years, not like 2020. And I do feel like Nintendo is getting there. I also want to say that this issue existed while PS5s and Xbox One X's or Xbox Series X's were being produced, and they still managed to get those out there for their holiday.
Yeah.
So I just, I feel like if Nintendo has this big plan or big hope to have this revision come out for the holiday, if Sony and Microsoft can get out their next generation systems out for the holiday, I want to say Nintendo should be able to get theirs out a year into the future. Could be wrong. I could be misled here. But that's what I'm sort of thinking. I still think it's going to happen. Again, Bloomberg has been wrong in the past, but I kind of want to believe them here. I feel like, they're a credible source. It's just when you're reporting on information that hasn't been announced yet, you never really know what actually is going to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Blue Arrow corrected me. You mean semiconductors. Yes, thank you.
Oh, that's what you said.
I don't know. I'm not a tech head. I don't know.
Honestly, don't know what a semiconductor is either. I could probably look it up and understand, but I just don't know.
Yeah, I see some things in the chat. I'll read them real quick. Birdman, and technically we kind of know what chip is going to be used for next gen Switch or for the Switch Pro. I don't know, this stuff is confusing. Paint Fat Purple. That story about the Tegra X1 is ending production is just removed from 4chan. That's where they got the story. Birdman, Doctre found the Nvidia is making Orin the next gen chip for Switch. Okay. Orin, interesting. I'll have to look into that. For sure.
I'll tell you right now, they're not using Orin for the next gen Switch.
Simply because I don't know.
The Orin chip is not a gaming chip; it's an AI-focused mobile, car. Like self-driving car chip. They might use something based on the similar architecture, like the Tegra X1 Marco uses the Tegra X2 architecture, but it's not going to be the Orin chip.
Interesting. Okay. I don't know what to make of that myself, but what I'm expecting for the Switch Plus is that it's gonna be a little bit better, right? It's basically what you said earlier, Brandon. They're gonna have some minor improvements to the overall chipset, and it's gonna look and run better across the board. But when docked, they'll be able to run games in 4K through some sort of upscaling technology. I'm assuming DLSS 2.0, and it's gonna be a pretty nice improvement. And that's it. Like it's not like games are gonna be. This is not a PS5 on a tablet.
No,
that's not what this is gonna be. But it's still going to be able to upscale games at a higher resolution. It's going to be a nice demonstration of mobile technology. I think that's something else to consider here, that this is going to be an opportunity for Nvidia to show off some of their innovations on the biggest stage through a new Nintendo piece of hardware. And I think that's going to be pretty exciting for people. So, my impression is that it would be, obviously things can happen that aren't the most desirable because of global circumstances, but I really feel like it would be a big miss if Nintendo misses out on this holiday, because especially after 2020 was already kind of a slow holiday already. If they have another holiday in a row where they don't really deliver the goods, that'll be disappointing. And when I say the goods, I mean top tier AAA Nintendo games, backed by awesome new hardware. So, it would be strange. Not to mention, like, if we go to 2019, like, the biggest game we had from Nintendo was Pokemon Sword and Shield and Luigi's Mansion 3. Two great games, but also, like, Luigi's Mansion 3 is a real, like, hardware pushing game, But it's still, I still wouldn't really look at it like a Mario Odyssey in terms of like epic proportion, or Breath of the Wild, or Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and then we have Pokemon, which Pokemon is great, it sells really well, but it's not like that big grandiose kind of game in terms of big open adventures, right? Legends Arceus hasn't happened yet, and from what we've seen of that, it's still not that impressive compared to other offerings from Nintendo. So my simple point is that I feel like we're due for like a really big holiday from Nintendo. So it would be. I'm sure they'll still have games, but I want to see them have like a big holiday. Yeah. It's been a while. I feel like we're due for one.
We need it coming off the pandemic year, man.
Yeah. So I mean, I feel like that kind of rolls into our next topic, though. Unless there's anything else you want to add regarding this whole Switch Pro Plus Tegra X1 production ending issue thing.
Nah, just that we'll have to wait and see what they do.
Yeah,
it's gonna be very, very interesting, and you guys can count on me to keep you informed on the podcast about the more tech-specific stuff that might come up. So.
I'll have to look up those semiconductors, though.
Yeah, I need to know what's going up with these semiconductors.
Yeah, but yeah, let's transition here, because it does sort of relate, because we're hoping for Nintendo to have a very strong second half of 2021. And if you compare what we know so far for the first half of this year, I feel like it compares favorably to other first halves for the Nintendo Switch. We got 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, Bravely Default 2, two Nintendo published products. Later this month, we're getting Monster Hunter Rise, not a Nintendo published game technically. However, we are under the impression it is a paid timed exclusive. So it's a big deal, and Nintendo definitely had a hand on getting this game on the Switch. It's a big exclusive. We're getting new Pokemon Snap in April, Miitopia, some like a remake of a 3DS game with some new content in there in May, and then in June we're getting a new Mario Golf game, and then in July we're getting Skyward Sword HD. All that together in terms of like big Nintendo exclusive that they put money into, that they're backing, that's not bad for a first half of the year. If you compare it to other first halves, it's pretty favorable, I would say. Yeah. And if you look at every year, pretty much across the board, that second half is better. There's even bigger games coming out then. Why? Because that is the bigger sales period of the year. So that's why we get the bigger games that time of the year. We've talked about it before. There are rumors of a lot of different things. Potentially a Fire Emblem remake, potentially a new Metroid game, potentially a new Donkey Kong game, potentially a new Mario Party. And then there's the possibility of some Zelda ports like Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD. I am still of the belief that Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be a holiday 2021 game. Possibly. That's what I think. We'll see what happens. But, you know, if there is a new Switch revision coming out to close out the year, Nintendo's going to want to have some compelling software to back that system. It's not going to just drop. They're going to have software to back that system. They even had software to back the Switch Lite. We go back to September 2019. Dragon Quest XI S. Nintendo put a lot of money behind that to get Square to get that game running on the Switch. It was basically built from the ground up. It's the definitive version of Dragon Quest XI. It's a great port of the game. They got that out there alongside Link's Awakening remake in September, the same month as Switch Lite. And then there was a lot of games that came out beforehand and afterwards as well. This was a jam-packed period. Nintendo wanted to push that new hardware. They wanted to get really strong sales. This second half of 2019 was pretty impressive. So I think we could be looking at something similar in 2021. I think that's possible. If we look at what we've already mentioned, imagine we get a new Donkey Kong, a new 2D Metroid, a Fire Emblem remake, Breath of the Wild 2, and maybe there's something else thrown in there that's pretty awesome. Like, that would be kind of comparable. It would be pretty exciting. I think that's possible. Obviously, there's also the new Pokemon game. So, you know,
we got Monster Hunter Stories too, I think.
Monster Hunter Stories, yeah. That's a Switch exclusive, right? And I haven't even mentioned Shin Megami Tensei 5. So yeah, there's some big stuff that can definitely help to sort of fill out the second half of 2021. Now, you know, some of these things could be pushed into the beginning of the fiscal year. I've talked about it multiple times already. Because Pokemon Legends Arceus is coming out early 2022, to me that suggests that they're not going to position Zelda then, because I think Pokemon Legends Arceus is coming out March 2022. That doesn't seem like the kind of game you have for Switch Pro, right? That's timing wise, I feel like that doesn't make sense unless they're lying about early 2022. If they're lying about that, then, you know, sure, we could see a Switch Pro and Breath of the Wild 2 come out in March 2022, maybe. But given that they literally told us early 2022, I think the best period to sort of expect for that game to come out is March 2022, which kind of positioned us in a situation where, yeah, maybe we get, you know, Breath of the Wild for the holiday. I think that's a possibility. But anyway, about this E3 situation, are we actually getting E3, right? Are we gonna see some announcements of the things I just brought up, right? The Metroid, the Donkey Kong, the Zelda. Like, are we gonna see these things in a E3 Direct? Maybe. So recently we got a little bit of an update from Jeff Grubb. So if you guys don't know who Jeff Grubb is, he works for GamesBeat. Cool dude. Definitely check him out. He's a reporter for GamesBeat, and last year he kind of gave us a suggestion of what to expect from Nintendo, and he was pretty spot on about it in terms of new information. Like, he, you know, had given us indications for the partner showcases, for news on 3D All-Stars. And this year, he's talking about more things to sort of expect, right? And if you look at this list he has out here, let's see, March 31st, yeah, Nintendo's going to execute Mario. That's when a lot of Mario's will be taken off the eShop. But moving into June, he's talking about E3 stuff, right? So June, not E3 publishers going rogue. June-ish, Summer Games Fest. June 15 to 17, E3 Digital Edition. June 30, Tim's birthday. July, not E3 continues. More publishers going rogue. And I went ahead and saw his little episode to kind of expanding upon that listing there. And, you know, the basic thinking is that there will still be potentially an E3. Like, it kind of depends on the gaming companies, how many gaming companies get involved with the ESA to do it, because the physical live event has been canceled. Just so we're clear, that has been canceled, but there are still plans to try and push a digital event, a live stream broadcasted event, but that is contingent upon enough gaming companies wanting to be involved. So that's where we kind of have to wait and see on what happens. And because of that, it's kind of hard to say what Nintendo's going to do, because they could, just have another E3 Direct. Maybe they just want to return to a norm. We got that February Nintendo Direct. It does seem like Nintendo's positioning themselves as they have done in the past. They have a little bit of a Direct in the early part of the year, a big mid-year E3 Summer Direct, and then a September Direct. Like, that has kind of basically been their pattern the last few years. They don't do it exactly like that. Like, maybe they might mix it up, have a Direct Mini in January and then a Direct in March. But the point is, they have, within that January to March window, they have information then. Then June, they have the biggest blowout of information. Then later into the year, they kind of close things out and sort of have another Direct around September to carry us throughout the holidays into the beginning of the year. So, it seems like that's where we're headed. So even if Nintendo doesn't give us like a specific E3 Direct during that week, June 15 to 17, I do think that there will be an event of some sort from Nintendo around this time, give or take a few weeks, because they may not want to have to pay for the E3 fees and to be a part of the broadcasting event. Maybe they want to do things slightly separately and time things how they wish. Absolutely.
Though I would say, perhaps joining E3 right now might be smart.
Okay.
We didn't get E3 last year, and that was something that was really highly missed. We got a couple of shows from Microsoft and Sony, but they weren't really the same. And we didn't have that big coming together of all these different game companies for their events and stuff. Like, there wasn't this big celebration of gaming like we get every year. It was hard not getting... It was like if the Super Bowl got canceled for 1 year. Like, crazy. For us. So I'd imagine maybe Nintendo is like, hey, we come to E3. That's going to be pretty hype for people, I think. Just to see Nintendo at E3... see them actually participating with the show, doing their digital event, I think would just be a lot more hype, especially coming off last year, than to just be like, we're skipping E3 again, and we're just gonna do our own thing. Also, I'm pretty sure E3 might die if they do that.
Yeah.
E3's on life support right now. They need help.
It's a compelling case, Brandon. I'd love for Nintendo to save E3. I like the idea of Nintendo having an event around then. It's when people are going to be... It's still the time where most people are prepared to pay attention to Nintendo, right? Like, if Nintendo wants to reveal this new Switch hardware around then, it's that there's that possibility, and they're gonna have all these games, and if it is gonna be the time to blow up Breath of the Wild 2, like that does feel like kind of like the time. Now at the same time, Nintendo can drop a Direct whenever and it'll still get millions of views. If they want to show off Breath of the Wild 2 in a treehouse, they can do that. If they want to wait a couple more months, like September or October, to reveal this Switch revision, they could do that. I feel like October might be too late if they're aiming for a holiday release, but you get my point. They can wait for when they're ready and they'll still get a lot of views. So it's hard to say for sure, but my thing is that I think that they're gonna have a Direct of some sort before the summer's over. It just, timing-wise, that's what makes sense, because in terms of what we know, in terms of what's coming out, once you get to July, we don't know anything else past July. It's similar to why we got a February Direct. Once you get past April, there's nothing. So around that time, I think they're going to start doing things. I mean, you could argue maybe they'll do it like May instead, but I feel like early June, the first half of June is kind of when I expect to see that. And it lines up with the Age of Calamity DLC that's supposed to drop around then, so if they're going to have a bit of a Zelda-focused E3, they're going to make several Zelda announcements. Maybe they show off that DLC, then shadow drop it, give us another update for Skyward Sword HD before it comes out next month, and then they announce a couple more Zelda things, and then they have the Breath of the Wild 2 blowout. They could maybe do that. And actually, the way I kind of think of it, I'm thinking of it kind of like the E3 2018. So at E3 2018, it was dedicated to Smash Brothers. It took up the entire second half of the Direct. But they talked about other things for the first half, right? So that's what I'm sort of thinking will happen. They'll say, all right, we're going to have an E3 presentation. Maybe they don't use the E3 moniker because they might do it a few weeks before or afterwards, right? But around this time, that summer time, that June period, right, is what I'm thinking. They have this direct. They say it's going to talk mostly about Zelda, but it'll have a focus on Zelda anniversary plans, but there'll be other things. So the first half of the direct, they reveal what's coming out throughout the second half of 2021. We finally get some sort of Metroid announcement. We get Donkey Kong announcement, a Fire Emblem announcement. Maybe they tease the next Microsoft game for next year. Maybe they give us a trailer for Bayonetta 3 finally, probably for next year as well. But you know, they say those things, and then they transition to Zelda anniversary stuff, where you show us off that Age of Calamity DLC, another update on Skyward Sword HD, announced Twilight Princess Wind Waker HD coming to Switch, and then they blow up Breath of the Wild 2. Like, that's kind of how I think this is gonna go. And then after that, it transitions to Treehouse, just a whole bunch of Breath of the Wild 2 gameplay. That's what I think is gonna happen,
dude. Yeah, I mean, that's what I want to happen. You know, we're not quite in the you know, E3 2016 territory where we can just focus completely on Breath of the Wild, unfortunately, but it's still gonna be great, because I agree. I think there's gonna be a huge Zelda focus, because I think there's gonna be other big games coming out this year, but there's not gonna be even close to the caliber of what Breath of the Wild sequel's gonna be. So that's definitely their biggest thing. So I'd imagine they're gonna put a considerable amount. Yeah, I like the idea that it's like the 2018 E3 where they focus on Smash and they give it a good, like, you know, I think that direct was like 40 minutes and like 20 minutes of it was Smash.
Exactly. That's pretty much what I'm thinking, dude.
Yeah, dude, I totally take it. I think there's definitely enough information in Breath of the Wild sequel that we don't know that they can do that, and other anniversary plans and stuff, and Treehouse can just go on that for hours. I mean, the original Breath of the Wild, there was something like 6 to 8 hours of footage.
It was amazing. Man, I remember that awesome. Happened. I just spent all day watching.
Yes, literally all day.
It was great. Great. Now there
my
is
parents
something.
Are like, "What are you doing? You want dinner?" I'm like, "No, bro. It's Breath of the Wild, bro. Put me my food."
Something to consider though is that because there's not going to be like a physical event, there won't be people playing demos. So, are we going to get any eShop demos? Probably not for Breath of the Wild 2. They're probably just going to rely on the Treehouse team to really deliver the goods here. So we'll get a lot of Treehouse footage. There's going to be a lot of Treehouse footage. It won't just be for Breath of the Wild 2. They're going to show off those other new games that they're going to have in this direct as well. So I expect that. And maybe there'll be a few demos dropped. Probably not for Breath of the Wild 2, but maybe for other things. I wouldn't be surprised if they did something for Metroid, because Metroid kind of needs that a little bit of extra advertisement. So maybe they do that.
Yeah,
you know,
that'd be nice.
I mean, imagine that, right? Imagine they're like, oh, they announced the new Metroid game. You can play this later today. Like, that'd be awesome. Regardless if it's Prime Trilogy or 2D Metroid. If we get both, amazing. That'd be great. I do feel like, you know, while I would love to see a big teaser for Prime 4 this year, I think, was it you that suggested that maybe what they do is that they announce 2D Metroid and they say that Prime 4, we're working on it, so just stay tuned. You know, like, I could see that.
I think I said something along those lines.
Yeah. Basically just because if they're going to have a big Breath of the Wild 2 thing, you know, they do that. But if they do that, that leaves the door open for a big Game Awards Prime 4 teaser. They announced Prime Trilogy coming out early 2022, and then Prime 4, they have a little teaser for it. That could be like the big Game Awards thing then, because keep in mind, Smash DLC is going to end. Assuming there isn't a Fire Spice Volume 3, they're going to need something else to kind of hype us, you know?
Seems so, like it's going to end well before the end of the year, too.
Right. I feel like E3 could potentially be the end of Smash announcements.
Oh, yeah. Potentially, yeah. If they announce... How many are left?
Two.
3? Two. Yeah, they could announce both at E3. That's crazy, dude.
Like... They could announce both.
I wonder if they won't, just because it's the last two. They might maybe hint and then.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, they did do 2 at E3 2019.
Right, but they weren't the last 2.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing, right? So, like, what if one of them is a Zelda character?
Ooh.
Maybe they open
it's
up.
possible. I'm just saying that there's also a possibility that, like, hey, we want another Smash announcement later in the year, so we're gonna save this last character.
Yeah, it's just based off the way they've been pacing them, though. It just kind of feels like
for sure
we're done
so quick.
in 3 months. We're done 3 months from now. That's how it feels. Like Steve was
3
October.
months, another character.
Steve was October. Sephiroth is December. Pyramith were early March, the first week of March. So basically, like 9-week windows. You know.
He's like,
which means that in May
2 to 3 months in between each one.
Right. So, but like May we'll get another. Like we're at least gonna get the second to last reveal of this E3.
I think we'll get a shadow drop maybe, or very close at E3, because that's about the time. Yeah, that another character should be coming out. So we might see Yale shadow drop, and then the last character hinted or announced fully.
So hear me out here. This is like the ideal E3 setup, right? You start the show with a Smash reveal, and it's a big third-party character. I don't know who it's going to be. I have to imagine at least one more third-party character that do that, and it's a really cool character that goes a role with fans. Then they talk about different things. They talk about, the things you mentioned. To talk about Metroid, Donkey Kong, Fire Emblem, Mario Party. They transition to Zelda stuff. They start off with another Smash reveal, Impa, in Smash Brothers, right? Hey. That one's coming out a few months down the road, right? This third-party character comes out first, and that's like, oh, this is the end for the Smash stuff. Stay tuned for the Sakurai Presents, right? Then they talk about all the other Zelda things, and then they close out Breath of the Wild too. Like that's, I think that's like that's a really good and it's conceivable. Like that is, it's not. I don't think that's at all a stretch for them to do that.
No, it's not. Though I'd love Zelda to be the last character. But I'm wondering if maybe because Zelda's gonna sell either way. Like, they don't need Smash to promote Zelda, Like, there's literally no need. In fact, they kind of promote each other with how big they are.
Well.
So at the same time, they might want to do something a little bit smaller. Maybe something that's more of a huge fan requested character or something. But dude, I'd be selling for a Zelda character as well, and that would be a reason to announce both of them. No matter what at E3. Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, if it's Impa, that DLC is gonna sell.
Oh yeah.
We'll see. I mean, we obviously don't know who it's gonna be, but I feel like an Impa is kind of like the best bet for a Zelda character.
Yeah, if it's gonna be a Zelda character, I think Impa's pretty much a lock.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm assuming this is the end. But we'll see.
Yeah.
But let's check in with the chat here real quick. Taker 610. Thank you very much, Taker. Let's see here. Whenever you guys say Zelda Blah, I think of the merchant from Frozen. Big summer blah. Hopefully, I know it brings the goods in 3 months' time. Yeah, we're really just 3 months away. So
crazy.
Yeah, time is flying by. We're gonna get Monster Hunter Rise in a couple weeks, and not even. And it's gonna be a great game. Yeah.
Feels like it was announced like 2 months ago, at the most.
Yeah, I clicked out of the stream real quick. We're good. Seems like we're good. Yeah, we're still alive. Cool. But we got things to play and worry about, so it'll be fine. Dominator, do you think there is a chance that Raiden from Metal Gear could be coming in as one of the last 2 DLC?
I find that highly unlikely.
I think it was hard to get...
Is Konami on Metal Gear now? Or always?
Yeah, I think getting Snake in there was tough.
Yeah.
So I don't expect another one for that, unfortunately. Snake was a miracle in and of itself.
Yeah.
But Smash Ultimate has all sorts of miracles, so you never know for sure, right? Ronnie Fazio. What do you say, Brandon?
Everything's a possibility. It's just not. It's just whether it's likely or not.
Yeah. Ronnie Fazio. Do you think Lloyd Irving has a shot at being Namco's second rep? The last Smash 4 Mii costume that's missing is his.
Who? Lloyd Irving.
Lloyd Irving from Tales of Symphonia on the GameCube. I don't see it happening. Like, I want it to, right? Because he's been one of those characters that fans have wanted for a long time. I remember being a part of forums years ago, kind of hoping for that. I don't. It's another one of those things where, like, it's possible, but I wouldn't put it, like, at the top of my list, right? At the same time,
like Attack on Titan character.
Sure. No. That's not happening.
He does. He's got like dual. No. I'm saying he looks like an Attack on Titan character. He's got like dual swords, and it's like this picture I'm looking at. This very similar art style too.
I mean, it'd be cool, but I know what'll happen. People will scream another anime sword fight.
Yeah, I was about to say anime sword fighter. Anybody? You asked for anime sword fighter, right? That's what you wanted?
I don't mind. Sonic, I don't think it's Impa. By the time Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity came out, Nintendo had made their collection of characters on the DLC. Well, I mean, if they announced this character in June, and they're also talking about Age of Calamity DLC in June, at the same time, kind of works. I want to point out that Pyra and Mithra were announced for Smash Brothers not too long ago, and Xenoblade Chronicles 2, a game that came out in 2017 and had its DLC came out in 2018, had quite a surge in sales. So, you know, I don't think the timing necessarily hurts here. I think they could do that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be input based off Age of Calamity either. So there's that to consider. Guy you don't know. Metro really does need a big marketing push so that a new game gets enough time to be advertised, so there's a wider audience that is aware of it by release.
True. I think the last game on the 3DS had like 2 or 3 months. That was it. I imagine it'd be pretty similar to the next game, to be honest.
Yeah. I see Coloco's in the chat. What's up, man? Isn't the spirit board thing kind of debunked with Min, I meant? Yeah, like, I don't...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. A spirit could conceivably be added to Smash Brothers. I think so. Yeah, it's already happened. ASAP Rel added me. I hope Nintendo keep the last 2 Smash characters first party. No trash. I mean, Crash or Spyro. Give me a Breath of the Wild champion. I feel like it's possible we've already gone all the first party characters that we're going to be getting for this one.
Got quite a few.
2. But I mean, it's been a 50-50 ratio so far. I'm willing to think that it's going to continue to be that.
Feels like more because the last one from the first Fighter Pass was also the first party.
Yeah, so like if you think of it in
like
that
lately
way,
a lot.
Yeah, that's true. Because Byleth came out a year ago. Yeah,
like January 2020.
Yeah. So in this current decade that's been going on for a little bit, it's been 3 Nintendo, 2 third party. So we'll see. But I mean, what do you think, Brandon? Do you think, just kind of going back to the topic here, do you think that there's gonna be an E3 Direct for sure, or do you think it's gonna be just a summer Direct around that time, or do you think Nintendo's just gonna wait even longer, or perhaps sooner?
They won't wait longer. If anything, they'll do it a bit sooner. But just going off the fact that we got a huge Blowout Direct in February. Like, sometimes we'll get that in January, and then we'll get another one in, like, March or something like that. Or we'll get a Direct Mini and get another one in March or April. But to get a big 40-minute Direct in February is kind of a little bit in a weird spot. Because then if you don't have anything else before E3, it kind of leaves a bigger gap than usual. You know, by about a month or 2.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there'll be a Direct Mini in between then. Who knows? Maybe they'll just do trailers. But if anything, I think they could do earlier, not later, though. I don't think they'll do later.
Okay.
Especially if they want to, you know, talk about Breath of the Wild, the holidays, and potentially lead up to talk about a Switch Pro, whether that be... Honestly, they probably won't talk about the Switch Pro in E3. They don't really talk about hardware in E3 anymore. and they've kind of said that they're. I mean, the last time they were kind of like shying away from that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I see what you're saying there. Like, conceivably, they could do it like the first week of June or like late May or something. I will stand by this at least. I don't think Nintendo's gonna wait all the way until July. I don't think they're gonna wait until July without announcing anything else. Now, if they go ahead and in March or April they drop a trailer for Metroid 5 coming out this August, then at that point I'd be like, okay, maybe they can wait till like the end of June, early July, because then they kind of have, given us a little bit more information about what's to come in the year, right? But I'm not expecting that. That was when we got Paper Mario announced, the way it was. I think that had a lot to do with the circumstances surrounding the pandemic. I think that would have been saved for a bigger presentation in a normal year. So I'm not expecting like a reveal of like Metroid 5 or a new Donkey Kong and with just a trailer drop on Twitter on some random day next month or the month after. I think it is just going to be a direct kind of presentation around summertime.
What I'm expecting, this is kind of my timeline of events leading up to and through E3 and leading up to the Switch Pros announcement stuff. I'm obviously we've been getting a lot more trailers and things like that, Twitter drops and YouTube, and that's been a good source of information, so that's gonna keep going. And I suspect we'll get either direct mini or some kind of like more specific direct, like before E3, perhaps. I think we'll get some kind of event.
It does feel like a bit of a gap, right? If we waiting all the way until June, it's 4 months.
Yeah. And then I think in June we'll get our E3. I do think Nintendo will go with E3 if they're doing it. Like if E3 gets enough people to work with them, I think Nintendo will be one of them. They've been one of like the biggest people at E3 for a long time now, so I don't see why they wouldn't. They seem to really like E3. And then afterwards, I think that's when they're going to talk about games, and then they'll talk about Breath of the Wild, all that kind of stuff. And then the next month, like July, I think is when they're actually going to announce like a Switch Plus. I don't think they'll do it at E3. They just don't really announce hardware in those type of events anymore.
Well, I'll give you this. I kind of like what you're thinking. Maybe we have like a May Direct, right? Like a big summer May Direct or early June at the latest. And then in July or August, they have a presentation that's kind of like pushing this Switch revision, showcasing 4K Nintendo games.
Right, because I don't think they'll have time to do that at E3. Nor do I think it's the best place for them to just show off hardware. So. Yeah, you know what?
I'm
gonna. Digital conference.
This is tough. Like I'm not gonna make a prediction, but I kind of feel like July at the earliest, but I'm thinking maybe August is when we would get an announcement for this Switch revision. Because if we go by the Bloomberg report, right, it says that they'll start production of the Samsung OLED screens in June. And what is they say something about July? Kind of see that real quick here. All right, let me read this for you guys. Put it up for you guys to see.
I imagine they'll want at least like 2 to 5 million units available at launch.
Yeah.
So you're gonna need like a
Samsung Display Co. will start mass production of 7-inch 720p resolution OLED panels as early as June, with an initial monthly target of just under 1 million units, said the people who asked not to be identified discussing internal matters. The displays are slated for shipment to assemblers around July, the people said. Representatives for Nintendo and Samsung Display declined to comment. So they're going to start putting this together in July. So to me, that suggests that if we're going to have a presentation for this, I feel like the earliest, like conceivably July, right? Because they probably already have a proof of concept one before then. But I feel like August is kind of like August, September is that expectation. I would say September is getting a little bit late if it's going to be something that's coming out for the holiday, right? But so I'm going to predict. I'm not ready to make like a hard prediction, but I'm guessing maybe August is when we see a presentation that is talking about this new Switch revision.
Yeah, I agree. I think September's too late. I think July is good. I think they need a little bit more time than they did between the Switch Lite and its announcement to release.
With the assumption being this
like
comes
2
out in
months.
November.
Yeah. So I think July, yeah. And I'm sure they already have like dev kit versions and all that kind of stuff, so like they can show it off if they want.
Yeah.
Maybe not the physical form factor. I don't know. Maybe they probably have prototypes as well, like you said. So I mean, they can show it off now if they wanted to. I assume they're not going to, obviously, but I assume even now they have like prototypes. So by July, I'm sure they'll have like stuff like they can like show it off, you know, in person. Like they'll have a little like video presentation of them showing it off.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I think that's the best because like some people are like, I think E3 is gonna come around and the Switch Pro isn't gonna be announced, and people are gonna be like, oh, Switch Pro's fake because it getting announced at E3, and I just don't think that's the place it's gonna get announced. I don't think it's a good place for it to get announced either way. There's just not enough time in the presentation to go over every single aspect of a new system while you got all these big games to talk about. You gotta talk about the Breath of the Wild 2 sequel, that's gonna take a long time, more E3, 35th anniversary stuff for Zelda, all the games coming up this holiday, surely plenty of games for 2022 as well. I mean, we're already getting 2022 games, so I'm sure we'll get even more E3. They're not gonna have time in this 40-minute presentation to then also talk about a whole new platform and show off everything that's worth it about that.
Yeah, I feel like what's gonna happen is that we're gonna get this direct, be it late May or June or what have you, and they're not gonna mention the Switch revision, and people are gonna start saying, "See, it's fake. It's fake. It's not real."
Mm-hmm.
You just gotta wait a little longer.
A month or two later.
Just gotta wait a little longer. Yo, I see some cool peeps in the chat. Shout outs to Monster Maze. What's up, man? How you doing? Gamebird Classic. Hello there. How you guys doing? You know, I kind of want to go back to the timing of the releasing here, because you think about it, right? It kind of makes sense. I do like this August potential reveal time for the Switch revision if it's coming out this November. So I can see something like this happening, right? Like maybe we get like a Metroid game in August, right? And then September we see maybe like Mario Party and Donkey Kong come out. And then in October we see Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. Like something like that happens, right? And then in November we get the Switch Pro Plus and Breath of the Wild 2, and then in December maybe they squeeze in another little game, maybe the Fire Emblem remake, or maybe they save, you know, like something like that, right? And that would be a big sort of thing. Maybe Fire Emblem comes out sooner, and then they save Donkey Kong for December or something. Maybe it's something that kind of showcases the Switch a little bit better in terms of like visuals. But something like that, I think, could work really well. And what's interesting about this is that, yes, I understand if you look at the last 5 years or so, Pokemon games have kind of always come out in November. However, if we go back to last year, 2020, Crown Tundra DLC came out in October. X and Y came out in October. So there is a history of some October releases for Pokemon games, and considering now that Pokemon is coming out on the same platform as the bigger Nintendo games, they may want to change around their timing a little bit. And actually, and on top,
small game too.
Right, and it's an outsourced game, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. It's not being made by actually Game Freak. Game Freak's focus right now is Pokemon Legends Arceus, which is coming out early 2022. So, but potentially having this other Pokemon game come out a little bit sooner, coming out in October, puts a little bit more space in between the Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl and Pokemon Legends Arceus. So, hypothetically speaking, right, you get this October Pokemon release, and then you wait until March, which is almost half a year for Pokemon Legends Arceus, and that's kind of enough of a window to kind of give Pokemon fans before they're ready for that next big major release, you know? So I kind of like this timing a little bit more. It makes sense, especially November's a great time for hardware releases. We've seen that happen many times. Had the Switch not been delayed, it would have come out in November as well. And also, Zelda has a history of coming out in November as well, right? So I think timing-wise, this actually be a really good fit.
Yeah, I agree. November seems like a good time slot for them. And if they're gonna start doing production, they said around June or July, and they said what, almost 1 million units per month? That's gonna be what you got. 1 million for June, July, August, September, October, November. You got about 6 million, 5 to 6 million in production. That seems good for a launch. Yeah. That's what I said earlier. I was like, yeah, they probably want like about 5 million. So.
Right. And
check out.
The other thing is that, like, so here's another consideration, right? Like, people may argue that you want to get that this system may make more sense to come out to close of the fiscal year potentially, but wouldn't you want to hype it, assuming you can, right? Because obviously there are limitations, there are hurdles with the, I guess, the semiconductor issue and the pandemic and these different things, but wouldn't it make more sense to start selling the system before March so they can actually have a lot more of the system out there to kind of boost the fiscal year forecast?
Right.
You know, like if you release it in March, you're just kind of giving it a little blip right at the end. Ideally, I feel like what Nintendo really wants is to have this kind of big, awesome system coming out with Breath of the Wild 2 for the holiday once PlayStation, because this holiday, Sony and Microsoft are going to have some big things. Halo Infinite, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn. Yeah.
They're going to have stock, guys. Don't doubt it. They're going to have it.
That's another thing. They're actually going to be available there as well. So I think Nintendo would be really hurting in terms of like that spotlight. Obviously, the Switch is going to be fine. The Switch is not going to fail. But I think it would be a bit of a missed opportunity for Nintendo if they miss out on this holiday and only have like Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl and like Mario Party and a Donkey Kong game. Like, that's fine.
Yeah,
like, those are fine games, but it won't stand up well to Sony and Microsoft.
Also, if you look in the past, like, the Switch didn't ship with that many units. Like, people are complaining about PS5 and Xbox Series X and S renders. Literally, the Switch shipped with like half as many units as those systems shipped with. So, yeah, it's not like Nintendo hasn't had times. I think the pre-orders were like 2 million for the Switch in its initial pre-order, and then they got more, and it was like it ended up selling like only like 3 million on launch day. They had like barely any consoles made. So at this point, they seem like they might be ready to get out 5 million for this Switch Plus. So I think they'll have plenty of stock.
Yeah, the other thing is that Nintendo has many times benefited, I would say, from low supply because there's high demand, right? It kind of it's sort of them sort of artificially creating more value in the system. So as long as you can get a handful of million ready by the holiday, I think you do it. I think you absolutely do it. I think it's still enough to market Breath of the Wild 2 as a 4K Zelda, right? And obviously Breath of the Wild 2 is still available for everyone else. It still looks and runs great on base Switch, but it just looks and runs better on this other Switch. And I think that's their best course of action. Obviously, again, we don't know. There can be delays. There's all sorts of things that could not let Nintendo do this, but I feel like it's in their best interest to do this. And just for the record, while there is a lot of speculation from a lot of people right now that it may not happen, there isn't any solid information suggesting that it won't happen, like there isn't any insider that's saying I've been told this isn't happening, is what I mean, right? There isn't anything like that at this point, at least. That could change, but I still think that that things are looking up, but we'll see. I got a super chat here from Mumble Speed Talker. Thank you very much, Mumbles. Do you think the Switch Pro might be more powerful, but more like the new 3DS XL or a bigger overhaul in hardware? Let me reread that question real quick. Do you think the Switch Pro might be more powerful, but more like the new 3DS XL or a bigger overhaul in hardware? I mean, it's kind of a tough comparison to make because part of the value in the new 3DS was, yes, it was more powerful, but it was also, it improved the 3D technology and added an analog sort of nub on top of that.
They got more shoulder buttons too.
More shoulder buttons. So a lot of the value in the new 3DS wasn't just straight up better graphics.
Much higher build quality too in those.
Yeah, so there was all of those things, and some of that is still going to exist with this Switch system as well, I would say. But I think the biggest the biggest sort of sell here is going to be the 4K capability. That's going to be the biggest sell of this Switch revision. A better screen, a bigger screen, that's going to be nice. It's going to have better battery life, we assume, or at least a decent battery life compared to the base Switch. Well, it's going to be tough. I think the fact that they're supposedly targeting 720p is going to bode really well.
Right.
So it's going to be tough to say for sure.
I think load time should be better too.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's going to, across the board, have better performance. For sure.
I think it will. My opinion is it will be a new 3DS style or a new 3DS style upgrade in every way, except it will also improve graphics with DLSS. That's pretty much so it will be better, a bigger upgrade than the 3DS XL, but it will be pretty similar in other ways. Like the 3DS XL had a much better CPU, it had more RAM, it had all this stuff that I assume will also be in the Switch Plus, but then it will also get higher resolution on top of that, which the 3DS did not get. So, pretty similar though, overall. I imagine it will be mostly DLSS that comes in to really power through.
In case you heard any weird noise, that was my cat. Yeah, I mean, like, so my perspective is that it's going to feel a lot like a new 3DS in terms of marketing and Nintendo transitioning to a better system. But a lot more of the selling is going to be more focused on the improvement. So visually, it's going to feel like maybe a bigger jump from Switch to Switch Plus versus 3DS to new 3DS. But overall, similar sort of advancement in terms of how Nintendo sort of transitions that, I think. Yeah, don't expect this to be a PS5, a mobile PS5. That's not what this is going to be. Maybe 20 years from now. That's an exaggeration, but not quite that. A few more questions here. Guy you don't know. Hey Andre, do you know if Vergeben has brought up any recent rumors or leaks? I haven't heard any from Vergeben. I'll tell you that I haven't been paying attention to Vergeben for quite some time. I feel like in general, there haven't really been too many strong leaks for Smash characters. I really feel like no, it just hasn't been. You know, I'm still feeling pretty high and mighty about being semi-right about Pyra and Mithra. Rex is in there too, sort of, right? So, you know, we were talking about that for years, and that happened. I never heard about that from Vergeben.
Vergeben was big before Smash came out.
Right,
everything confirming, like, talking about Smash after that has pretty much been wrong.
Yeah, like DLC, like basically base roster stuff, there was a lot of things Vergeben was getting right, but afterwards, exactly, Brandon, no, I haven't really seen any consistent leaks for that at all. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about that. You know, I expect to be surprised with at least one more character. That I'll tell you that. Taker Atomy, do you guys think the July release of Skyward Sword will affect the timing of 35th anniversary Breath of the Wild announcements before or after, do you think? I think July is just early enough in the year that they can still have a big Zelda release in November. That's a 4-month window. Like, that's enough time. I think it's fine. Now, if they want to release Twilight Princess HD and Wind Waker HD in the same year, then it's a little different. But I'll argue, maybe you release those in March or February for the actual Zelda, for the next Zelda anniversary, right? To kind of close things out there right before the end of the fiscal year. And that kind of gives a few months of a window after release of Breath of the Wild 2. That's my thinking. I think some people might switch those around. They'll say, oh, Breath of the Wild 2 comes out later, and then we get Twilight Princess Wind Waker HD around the holiday. I just think that that's not a good sale. Not to mention, as we talked about earlier,
reflex kicked in there real quick.
Legends Arceus is coming out early 2022. Do you really want to position Legends Arceus and Breath of the Wild 2 right next to each other?
No.
I don't think so. I think it makes sense for that to be a holiday game. But we'll see.
I do think the comment was, just reading it again, I think he was talking about more of the announcement itself, not the release.
Oh.
But,
well, I mean, I think it's happening before. Sorry,
you can go over Skyward Sword again in June. I think that's a good gap, actually. Go over it again.
Again, we know for a fact that Age of Calamity DLC, the first wave, is coming this June. They're going to detail that. They could do it in its own separate trailer, But I also feel like, Brandon, I think you just said this, like Skyward Sword HD maybe needs another mention at some sort of presentation.
We still don't know what quality of life improvements are going to be in the game.
Sure. And Nintendo's going to have a big event, another direct probably before Skyward Sword HD, so before July. That's the perfect opportunity to talk about Breath of the Wild 2. So I really feel like the news is going to come before Skyward Sword HD comes out, because we're going to get more Nintendo news in general before July, I would say. Let's see here. So a Monster Mace has a question. Guys, make sure to check out Monster Mace's channel, right? Like, he's one of the best like Zelda YouTubers, so definitely check him out. Andres, do you think Switch Pro will have exclusives? I'd say it probably will. I don't see much value in upgrading the Switch. They still need to make every game compatible with the base model, since the base model is already struggling with some titles right now. I think that there's going to be some third-party exclusives. Yeah, there's going to be some third-party exclusives, and those are going to be like some pretty high-profile games. I think Nintendo games will not be. I think that won't be a good look for them. I think what they'll do...
I don't think they have time.
You don't think they have time?
They don't have time to go and make a big AAA Nintendo game specifically for this console. It's going to sell like maybe 20 million units in its lifetime. They got time and money for that.
Imagine they make Prime Trilogy like exclusive on Switch Pro. That'd be crazy.
For what reason?
No,
that's the thing. It's like, what reason does Nintendo have to make Switch Pro exclusive games when they're already like not even, they're tapping out the potential of the Switch, but like their games still run great. They still have tons of 60 FPS titles that run buttery smooth.
Right. I think with Nintendo games, they've been used to developing for weaker hardware for well over a decade. I think they'll be fine with still making sure games run on base Switch, but they'll have a higher fidelity version for Switch Pro Plus. But yeah, there's going to be some third-party exclusives, which I'm actually kind of excited about. If I can get some nice Resident Evil games, some new Resident Evil games on my Switch, that'll be pretty cool. I'll be pretty excited about that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are some rumors from some insiders suggesting that there are exclusives, so I think that's what's happening. Let's see here. LP, does anyone think Splatoon 3 will be shown off at E3 this year?
No.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm gonna say no. Like, if they show Splatoon 3 off at E3 this year, I think that's an indication that Nintendo does not have a lot to talk about.
No.
That would not bode well.
So I feel like that's probably like a summer 2022 game.
Yeah, now I will tell you, I do think we could get another update on it in a September Nintendo Direct around then. Yeah, that could definitely be possible. Yeah, so I do expect another update before the end of the year. I'm just not necessarily expecting one at E3. And if it is, it's a very minor update. Nishant Kalkar. Hey Andres, have you heard of Concert Leak? It's a leak about Smash supposedly saying Crash and Monster Hunter are the final two fighters. Papagenos has a video about it. I'll have to check that out. I'll tell you that if Crash and Monster Hunter are the two final characters, that would be pretty cool. But I'll also say I would find it to be quite strange if they released all of these Monster Hunter Mii costumes with Pyra and Mithra and other Capcom Mii costumes, and then didn't have any sort of Capcom Mii costumes to release for their eventual Monster Hunter rep. So I'm going to say that's probably not true just from that alone, but I'll check it out. Maybe there's something there. So just for the record, I was predicting a Monster Hunter character a few months ago, so it's not like I don't think it's a good bet. It's just at this point, based on what we've seen with the Mii costumes, it seems like they're not going in that direction, but again, we'll see. Koloko, I'm glad so many leakers have been proven wrong. It does nothing but build up false expectations, serve to be a letdown for many. I mean, I love to speculate, right? So I'm not going to necessarily take away from leakers necessarily, but I just think...
fake leakers, though.
Fake leakers. I mean, I do, I don't like it when people mislead intentionally. That is something I don't like, for sure. Yeah. So, there's that. But then also I think sometimes people think they have sources, and then they're either, it's leak bait or, maybe they just want more clout or what have you. I definitely don't like it when people do that. When they're just putting on information because they want more clout or something like that, or popularity. For sure, I'm not for that. But if someone can give me a hint towards something and it gives me something to talk about and be excited about and kind of get a better understanding of the overall picture, sure. Now,
I think at the end of the day, it's your job to like worry about yourself and like how you respond to a leak. It's not the leaker's job. As long as they're giving information that's credible, that they believe is true, it's not their job to try to monitor how you react to it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess it comes down to fake leaker versus real leaker, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I'll tell you that I wouldn't want to get like story spoilers. No story spoilers. No, none of that.
No spoilers. Those are the worst.
And Coloco specified here that's what I meant. Not speculation, leak bait, as you said. Yeah, fake leaks. You know, for sure. For sure. Let's see. ASAP Bro, has Monster Hunter Rise been confirmed to have a PC release? I believe it has, or is it at least rumored?
I think it's confirmed. I think it's going to have 1 year of exclusivity and then it's moving to PC, I think.
I can't type PC yet, but I don't know. Monster Hunter Rise is coming to PC in 2022. IGN. Seems legit. So, yeah, I guess it is coming to PC.
Pretty sure, like, the director of the game confirmed it is.
Yeah, LP. I honestly think Xenoblade 3 could come out this December. I highly doubt Xenoblade X2 is coming soon with the sales of 2 and DE. I'll tell you that Xenoblade 3, like, it would be a pretty good holiday if Nintendo can get out Breath of the Wild 2 in November and Xenoblade 3 in December. Like, that would be pretty good. I'm not sure that's what we're getting, but that would be a pretty good close to the year. Very strong. A Xenoblade game I think would go over really well with marketing a Switch Plus. Yeah. Sure. I think that would be nice. And we've talked about on the channel, Monolith Soft is probably ready with at least one game. They're probably not too far off. It could be Xenoblade 3. Brandon, you and I have discussed it may be more likely to expect a new IP from them instead. But
yeah, that's what I'm expecting.
Yeah, either way though, I think a new Monolith Soft project is around the corner for sure. Even if it doesn't come out this year, I'm expecting an announcement this year. Yeah.
I would say E3 time. That's about when we're going to see some new Monolith project.
Yeah. But, you know, there's just so many games that could potentially come out this year. Like, you got Bayonetta 3, Monolith Soft project, whatever the Mario Kart ARMS team has been working on. Whoever's working on F-Zero, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I want someone to be working on F-Zero, please. But you know, there's those projects, and then there's the Odyssey team supposedly working on something. It's rumored to be Donkey Kong, so there's that as well. There's a Fire Emblem remake that's been in development on top of that. All of these things could potentially come out this year. A Prime Trilogy as well. Conceivably, if Retro Studios has had a game completed for some time and they've been saving that, that's another potential project. There's a lot of games that Nintendo could conceivably have come out at some point during this year, and not all of them will. So, you know, that some of those things are going to be coming out in 2022 and beyond. But we got there's stuff, man.
Yeah, stuff coming, man.
Mumble Speed Talker. I wonder what Nintendo is doing March 31st. This March 31st or the next March 31st?
Murdering Mario behind.
Yeah, they're going to be getting their knives ready. Poor Mario. Joshua Ayers.
The electric chair.
Joshua Ayers. In all honesty, I think this podcast would have been better 2 months from now, like a late May or early June. It's still way too early to discuss the same stuff over and over again. Oof. So the Tegra stuff, that's news that just came out now, right? And the E3 stuff, also, we're getting information from Jeff Grubb from GamesBeat that there are summer plans. So to start talking about it now, 3 months in advance, I think is entirely fine because, well, we're getting news about it. So, no, I don't agree. But, you know, that's fine. To each their own. But, yeah, I mean, I think we're nearing the end of the discussion here. I see something from Blue Arrow. I get people want to Switch Plus, but why don't people want a next-gen console from Nintendo? At least if we want more third-party support. I think a lot of people do want that, you know, for sure. I think that's why a lot of these Switch Pro rumors have been embellished a little bit, because they want like that really powerful system. Hence that name Super Switch has been sort of going around. Super Switch implies more than just a little bit of an upgrade, more of a next generation sort of thing. So I do think there's that desire, but the thing is, realistically, I don't think we should be expecting one yet, and that's mostly based off of what Nintendo has been indicating to us through what they've said. They've recently told us that we're about halfway through the Switch's life cycle, and on top of that, if you look at the way the Switch is selling, we may have only just peaked recently, or we still may not have even seen the peak of the Switch. We're still in the high point of the Switch's sales. Yeah. I think once we start to see those dip, that's when you start considering, okay, Nintendo's getting ready for the next generation system. We're not there yet. We got a little bit of ways off.
I think that will start happening inevitably around when we start getting to like 110 million, 120 million. Like eventually you're just gonna run out of like as many people who want to buy consoles, just period. Like you're starting to get into like best-selling hardware of all time territory. So I think that's when we're gonna start seeing it like slow down. It's like it will start. I think it will start slowing down a little bit after 100 million, and then slowly as it goes on. So that I think by the time we get to like 120, which will be in like 2 years, that's when Nintendo's gonna be like, maybe we should come up with the next generation system. You know, we're only selling 10 million units a year instead of 20. Whatever shall we do?
Yeah, that's when you release the Switch VR. You think I'm joking?
Dude, I'd take a Switch VR.
I might be. I'm not sure.
I'd buy one.
I'm not sure.
I'd buy two.
Let's. I mean, we have a little bit more time, right? So let's talk about this. I want to talk a bit about Metroid. So, I was listening to Jeff Grubb earlier. So again, guys, check out Jeff Grubb. Just search Jeff Grubb, you'll find him. But he mentioned that Prime Trilogy is still a thing, which I think everyone kind of believes, right? But I guess the kind of question is like, when do we see that? We sort of touched on it earlier when I was talking about how like I feel like a 2D Metroid comes out this year, but maybe what happens is at E3 they reveal this 2D Metroid, and they do the thing where like they say, okay, hey, look, this we will talk about Metroid Prime 4 at a later date. Development is going smoothly. Then, if you're right, Brandon, about this other presentation for a Switch revision, right? This other presentation is more centered around showcasing high graphical fidelity Switch games. So this is the presentation. Maybe even this is when we see a teaser for Prime 4, right? We don't even have to wait for the Game Awards. They give us a teaser for that, but they also showcase Prime Trilogy as like an early 2022 title, you know? And they say, hey, look, you can play Metroid in 4K. Check this out. You know, first-person Metroid. That's the kind of like the time to kind of show something like that off.
Yeah, for sure. Because 2D Metroid, it's gonna look good, and definitely, I mean, it will look better in 4K than not 4K, but it's a 2D game at the end of the day, you know. You get a lot
side-scrolling. It's gonna have 3D. It's gonna have 3D graphics, just so we're clear, but it'll be a side-scroller. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
that's what I meant.
Exactly. I mean, we're on the same page. The point is, it's not the kind of game that you would use to sort of showcase a 4K capable system. But I do really like this idea of Nintendo having a separate presentation a couple months after their E3 style direct, where they showcase like the big graphical showcase kind of games. That'll be cool. Obviously, I feel like by this point we'll already have a lot of details about Breath of the Wild 2. But I'll say this: there is that possibility, right, where we don't get Breath of the Wild 2 news until after Skyward Sword comes out. If that's the case, you know, maybe we still get this event after Skyward Sword comes out, and this is where they show off Breath of the Wild 2, which showcases the 4K, 4K visuals along a few other potential 4K Nintendo games. and some exclusive, some third-party stuff too. I don't think this event would just be Nintendo stuff. I think there'd be some third-party stuff in there. Like if there is a Tomb Raider game or a Resident Evil game that they want to get as an exclusive, they'll showcase that. This would be pretty. I think it'd be fun.
Honestly, though, I think Breath of the Wild will be shown a little bit earlier because I do think it's coming out this holiday.
Yeah, I agree.
Shown off like August, that'd be a little soon. But maybe if it's not coming out this holiday, maybe they'll do that. You know, maybe it is coming out like early 2022. Who knows?
Yeah.
But
I see a question here from from Ronnie Fazio. Sorry. Do you think Monster Hunter Rise will get a patch for Switch Plus? So I mean, maybe.
Hell yeah.
I think. Well, hold on. I'm not sure because while I do think Switch games across the board are gonna run better, same way how it was for new 3DS. 3DS games just had a better frame rate on new 3DS. I think that's going to apply as well. And if there's any sort of dynamic resolution, Monster Hunter Rise will stay higher to that peak of that dynamic resolution on Switch Plus.
Right.
And I think that's without a patch. It's just because the system will run things better.
Yeah.
And they may patch it. They may very well do that. But something to understand about Monster Hunter, whenever they have like a new generation game, they usually have like the next they're kind of handle things very similar to Pokemon, where they'll have Pokemon come out, then they'll have like a third version come out like a year later. They're gonna do that for Rise probably. They'll have like the Monster Hunter Rise will come out this March, then next year they'll have Monster Hunter Rise Ultimate, and that may have like a 4K sort of patch, and not a patch but like optimized for Switch Plus. So
I would hope that they wouldn't do that, just because
they're gonna.
It'd be pretty crappy if they made you upgrade just for the new visuals.
I'll tell you
that should be perfectly possible to patch in with like literally no effort.
One other consideration, Brandon, is that maybe we get DLC instead. It's important to note that a lot of these third versions were coming out on handheld systems that couldn't really handle DLC as well, right? If you look at how Game Freak is handling Pokemon now, instead of having third versions, we're getting DLC instead. So maybe
Iceborne doesn't have a third version or second version. It just has the DLCs.
Which one?
Or not Iceborne. That's
Monster
the
Hunter
DLC.
World.
Yeah,
Iceborne,
World. I was confusing myself because I was talking about the DLC, so I said yeah. You know what I mean.
Right. It didn't have a third version, right? And that's a good point.
No. Just DLC.
Yeah, so maybe what's going to happen with Monster Hunter, since it's now on a system that's more capable of doing DLC, instead of having a third version, they just focus on DLC instead. And maybe with that DLC, they do bring in a patch for that's Switch Plus optimized. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm glad we talked about this because I wasn't even thinking about that until we talked. I was like, wait, hold on a second. They did all the other Monster Hunters on portable systems where DLC wasn't really like the best option. So maybe that's how
remembering your 3DS speed.
Yeah, that makes
Holding
sense.
It up with DLC.
Yeah. Aaron Curdy, do you think the Switch Pro will have bugs when it comes out? Not as many issues I think will arise with Switch Pro Plus, as compared to base Switch. And I'll say that I would love to say that when I got my original Switch that there were no issues, but when I got my original Switch, the dock didn't work. I was very disappointed. Fortunately, my brother had also gotten a Switch. I was able to borrow his dock to experience the glory that is Breath of the Wild. But when I got my original Switch, the dock did not work. That was very, very disappointing. Got it fixed. Didn't have to pay for anything, but had I not had a brother that I was living with at the time who also got a Switch, I would have been very, very sad.
Right. Yeah, that would have been upsetting.
Yeah. Because even though I did play Breath of the Wild in portable mode, I didn't want my initial experience of this game to be in portable mode. I wanted to experience it in all its majesty on my big screen, HD, television. So, it wasn't great that happened. So I'll tell you that with system releases, that definitely is a possibility. There could be some issues. There are some kinks to iron out. However, I feel like a revision, and I could be wrong here, but I feel like in general with revisions, there are less issues than new generation launches. I could be mistaken, but that's my impression.
Typically. I mean, the new 3DS was just so much a better product than the original. Like, the build quality on that was so much better. I wonder if we'll see something similar with the Pro, where the build quality is just a lot nicer, and we don't have these weird issues with, like, the fans stopping and melting the plastic, or it's getting so hot that it's bending and things like that. I think, well, a lot of those types of things that are, like, I mean, even the better, like, battery version of that fixed a lot of that issue. So yeah, I don't see them having any major issues. There might be some. I mean, every hardware launch is going to inevitably somebody is going to have an issue.
Like a different it'll be new hardware, right? It'll be a new SoC or whatever you call it. So
I'd assume so, yeah.
I mean, I don't know, maybe new issues could arise from that.
Maybe, but that was never really the issue for the original Switch. It was more just like accessories.
My impression is that
the build quality of everything around the chip.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that this Switch is probably going to run better, right? It's probably not going to have as many heating issues, you know, so you would think that maybe less issues across the board will occur, right? And there's also been this long-standing hope from people that this revision will fix the Joy-Con drift issue. I'm not entirely convinced of that. But, you know, you would think that Nintendo would have more of a focus on quality here, because they may sort of market this, at least at first, as more of a deluxe kind of system, a definitive version of the Switch, a premium.
All right.
So, you know, hopefully there are minimal issues. There for sure will be issues, just for the record. But not everyone's going to see those issues. Just a select, unfortunate few. That's how it always is. Just hopefully a very select few, and obviously Nintendo well, if it's not obvious, I'll make it clear. Nintendo will take care of that. So if you do end up having an issue with any sort of Nintendo system you get, there is that 1-year warranty. Call in, they'll take care of it for you. Yep. Sometimes you may have to sort of talk about the issue a little bit more, because, for example, when I got my Switch and the dock wasn't working, they wanted me to send in the whole thing. It took some convincing for me to just send in the dock, because I was like, no, I want to play my Switch. So, you know, it took some convincing, but they did take care of all of it and fix it for free. It didn't take that long, by the way, but I needed to play Zelda immediately, so, you know. Yeah. But moving on here with the chat. Harry Chest. Switch Plus and Breath of the Wild 2 coming holiday 2021. Twilight Princess Wind Waker combo coming September. Ocarina of Majora coming October.
God.
I mean, like...
that would be nice. But
I just feel like that's a lot of Zelda to come out in a small period of time. Especially because they're probably going to have other games that they want to come out with too. So, I'm not sure about that one. I mean, I'll definitely love it. I'm not going to complain about that at all. So we'll see. I'm not sure, though.
It seems like a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe one of those, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, but not the majority. Not that and Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, I don't think. Maybe one or the other. Combo pack.
Yeah. Let's see here. Jeff Purcheat. Anyone think that they will try to copy the next-gen systems offering SSD drives? No. Not me, at least. Just because it's a mobile system, and I don't think that they'll get that in there. They might have more flash memory, though. They might have more than 32. I honestly, personally, don't really care about them expanding their flash storage, just because I get a micro SD card.
I think they might want to, just because it's to the point where literally there are games that if you don't have a micro SD card, you literally can't install it.
Yeah, I mean,
they might want to bump that up to like 128.
I take it for granted because I have a 400 gigabyte SD card and it's great.
Yeah.
But I get it.
Like, imagine buying a new Switch Plus and you go to download your game and all of a sudden you just look and nope, too bad that game you just bought for your system is download only and oh, you don't have enough space.
I think the thing is Nintendo wants to keep the costs down, right? So
yeah.
that's kind of the issue with that.
I don't think the memory's that expensive. I looked into it at some point. It was like, I think it cost Nintendo $5 for the manufacturer of that was how much the flash memory cost in total, like on their build cost.
Yeah,
it was $5. So
yeah,
you might be able to upgrade that, double it or even triple it for not that much money.
And I wonder if I wonder how they'll position pricing of this. Like, are they gonna just sell it for $300, and just either just completely wipe out the current Switch from the market, or are they gonna like price drop that one?
I imagine they'll go for $350 at first, and then eventually, it will be dropped down to $300. I mean, that's what they did with that new 3DS. It came up for $200, which was like, I think the current 3DS you could get for like $160 at the time. And then, so it was more expensive by a pretty decent amount. And then eventually they just lowered it back down to normal 3DS.
I mean, I wouldn't mind if like they did like a price drop. So they maybe, sure, you do Switch Plus at $349.99, base Switch at $249.99, and then Switch Lite at like $179.99.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
I'd take it, but I imagine at first they won't change any of the prices, and that they'll just wait for like the next gen system to come out and then drop them all real hard.
Joshua, can anyone best describe if I should try Monster Hunter Rise? Why is it not like Zelda? I think why I don't find interest in it is the monster hunting and missions. Well, I mean, it's not Zelda.
That's literally the whole game.
That is, Monster Hunter is about hunting these giant, massive, epic beasts. And there's a lot of cutesy little things with the cats and stuff and all throughout the game. And, the lore can be somewhat fascinating. But ultimately, what you're playing this game for is to hunt monsters. That is what it is. That is what this is about. If you can get into the concept of going on a hunt for a giant monster, and sometimes, it isn't just about duking it out. Like, it's kind of like paying attention to its habits, seeing where you can best trap it or capture it, and learning about how it sort of like lives in its environment a little bit. Like, there is some of that in there. And then Monster Hunter is a big multiplayer game. You play with your friends and you're a party together, and it's a giant long boss fight, and you got to learn its habits, react. You carve out resources and you build up your armor and your weapons, and you get better weapons and armor. And there's a whole bunch of different types of movesets and weapon classes, and you can learn how to manipulate those. And I mean, that's what the game is about. That's what it is. It's about boss fights. That's basically what the game's about, and it's very fun. It can take many, many hours. If you can get into that, go for it. If you care more for adventure, like just pure adventure and not fighting, then maybe Monster Hunter is not for you, because that Monster Hunter is about fighting giant monsters ultimately. There's adventure in that, right? It can be pretty
Zelda
epic.
Zelda gonna be right down your alley, my friend.
Yeah, well, I mean, Zelda has a lot of action in it, but it is more
but that adventure focused. Real,
yeah, you can
real
avoid fighting for the most part.
The fighting is okay in the game, and there's some cool stuff you can do with like the engine, but the actual like combat system itself is pretty basic. Whereas the adventuring and everything you can do with that is just so crazy. Definitely the focus. So
yeah,
but no, this is like kind of like Shadow of the Colossus in the sense that pretty much everything is a boss fight.
Yeah, well, Shadow of the Colossus, the boss fights are like platforming.
Right. No, I mean just in the sense that it's all bosses. Obviously, the game is completely different.
Yeah. I'll tell you that you should just play the demo. Monster Hunter, there's a demo for Monster Hunter Rise available right now. Check it out. I think it's pretty fun. I'll tell you that they're exploring the environment is more fun now than it ever has been, because the environment's a bit more open. There's a lot of mountain range, and the one map we have available is it's a mountain range. It's different mountains and hills and forests and trees. And if you get good with the wire bug, you can do some platforming to get over some of those mountains and hills. There is a degree of openness to this that is pretty fun. There's a lot of collectibles throughout the environment. The music, I think, is great as well. So it's not like there's nothing else but fighting. You do explore a nice ecosystem. There are different environments to explore throughout Monster Hunter. There is that to it. And there is a hub world, which we haven't gotten to explore yet, which you get to explore as well. So there is more beyond the fighting, but the core essence of Monster Hunter is hunting monsters. So yeah, keep that in mind. Harry Chest. I missed the Wii mode for Twilight Princess HD, so I can't wait for hopefully pointer options for the Switch version. I want to point and shoot the bow and arrow like I did on Wii, but with HD graphics. I'll tell you that the pointer controls on Twilight Princess did feel really good. I did enjoy that back in the day. Back then it was new and fresh.
The gyro for the Wii U version works fine. Actually, I think it works better than the pointer for the bow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what they'll probably do.
Yeah, just gyro.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a simulation of it, basically, right? So, you know, yeah, that's gonna be great. I'm looking forward to that, too. I haven't having an itching for Twilight Princess HD. It's been a while. Coloco, being able to hook up Bluetooth headphones would be amazing. I'm assuming for a Switch Plus. Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
Would, if I owned any. But still, yeah. Most people do. I'm just crazy.
Yeah. Let's see here. All right, we'll try and finish things out with the next few questions. Taker610 added me. With the recent Bethesda deal closing, I kind of find it weird that companies want exclusive to sell more hardware when they usually take a loss or don't make much on hardware. Well,
Nintendo makes money on the hardware.
Keep in mind that they're still going to make money on the software, right? Like getting that software on there and it's selling is going to make Microsoft money. Like they're going to make money just from the games that are made from the companies they own, the developers they own. I don't know the full details of the exclusivity of some of their developers. I think that's kind of an evolving sort of situation we don't know all the details on yet. But you know, getting more games that they can use to attract to their platforms, even if it's just a timed exclusive or what have you, or at least just to steer them away from Sony, because Microsoft competes a lot with Sony, is something that they want to do. So, you know, there's value there. I mean, Sony has a lot of really strong exclusives that Microsoft kind of, people look at Microsoft like, oh, well, they don't have nearly as many exciting games as Sony does, and Sony still has most of the multi-plat, so we go for that, right? I think Microsoft buying a lot of these studios will help in that battle for sure. I mean, getting Bethesda was a big steal. Big. Yeah. Even though some of those games will still be on other platforms.
They're still on PC. They have some games on Steam. They got, obviously, their Microsoft Store. They got the Game Pass, which just does incredibly well for them. Earns them a ton of money. So the biggest thing, I think, for Bethesda acquisition in general is just being able to put all these games on Game Pass. They just put like 20 Bethesda games on Game Pass. It was insane. Like, they got 3 different Elder Scrolls games. They got both Dishonored games. They got a ton of games. Tons.
And that makes Game Pass all the more inviting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all the more worth it when you can play all your new Bethesda games. Doom Eternal's on there. Wolfenstein 2's on there. A lot of Wolfenstein games are on there. They have tons of Doom games. Doom 64, Doom 1, Doom 2, Doom 3. They got all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Crazy.
There's a lot of reason to get into it.
Doom 64.
Yeah. Let's see here. So if we got any more final questions. LP, I'm very concerned for Breath of the Wild 2 since it is reusing the same map. I highly doubt it will sell as much as Breath of the Wild 1 because of this. So, you know, I think it's a semi, at least a semi-valid concern, right? But I'll tell you that they've been working on this game for a very long time. Like, this is a very long time to be making a game that is a sequel, a direct sequel using the same engine taking place in the same environment, supposedly. Like, you would think that would cut down development significantly. This game is taking quite a while. I think that is suggested that they're doing a lot with this game. They're being very ambitious with this game. This is going to be a big deal. They're not going to call this game Breath of the Wild 2, by the way. It's going to have its own title. We just call it Breath of the Wild 2 because it's easier to say that than the sequel to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So it's going to have its own name. And with that in mind, like, I think it won't suffer from. I'm hoping it doesn't suffer from sequelitis. I think it has the ability to stand on its own, and I think there's a small potential that it could outperform Breath of the Wild. It's not likely though. I think Breath of the Wild likely will go down as the best-selling Zelda game for quite a while.
Maybe, but you can also think just a real quick point. I didn't think about this just now. Zelda was never. It was always like a big thing for Nintendo, obviously, and for hardcore Nintendo fans. But it was never really a very mainstream game compared to like Mario. Never has been. But now it is, and we're going into a Zelda game for the first time where the audience for it is on the same scale as Mario. The hype for it, and the sales are going to be that. So this is the first time going into a Zelda game where the expectation is of a Breath of the Wild caliber game, with Breath of the Wild caliber sales. This is the first time we're going to a Zelda game with that type of expectation of 20 or 30 million units.
Yeah, and I mean, if
like,
they also
we've never done that before.
True, and if they also market this as a 4K Zelda, that helps. Like Breath of the Wild, I think, was the first open world Zelda, so that's, I would say, a bigger sell than 4K open world Zelda, in terms of like that big jump. But
right.
There's a possibility that with this next game they could perfect the open air formula. If you thought Breath of the Wild was pretty good execution, Breath of the Wild 2 has a lot more potential. And to your point, Brandon, Zelda's a much bigger deal now, and there's so much Switch owners out there. And if this game launches with the next Switch, and this next Switch is like the next main Switch for the next 4 years, it could be something that rivals Breath of the Wild sales. I absolutely think so. Not convinced that it will do it, but I think it's at least going to sell 10 million, which is no slouch at all.
Pretty sure it's going to
I'll tell you this: it's at least going to be the second.
Year.
It's at least going to be the second best-selling Zelda of all time.
Yeah, easily.
At least the second best. But will it become the first? There's a lot. We'll see. It's hard to say. But they haven't taken a while with this game, so maybe they have some pretty amazing stuff cooking up. Joshua, hey Andres, did you enjoy your vacation time? I did. It was short, but I enjoyed seeing my family. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see here. Got any more questions? There's a few things here. Jeff Petit, I think that if this Switch revision is done well, Sony will put its game divisions up for sale. That would be hilarious, but also sad. I don't think that will happen. I think Sony actually has carved out a nice market for themselves. They are performing pretty well. I don't think they should be too worried.
They've been the most consistently selling gaming of the three for the past 20 years. So
they
have the best overall sales and or maybe not profits. They're probably have the best profits, but in terms of like hardware sales and stuff, they probably have the best overall since they started.
PS1 was killer. PS2 was killer. PS3 was okay.
Came back to 90 to 100 million units.
It still ultimately sold pretty good once everything was said and done. PS4 is doing very, very well. So, their only real flop was the Vita.
Yeah.
Now, the PSP definitely didn't perform nearly as well as the DS, but PSP still
did good though.
PSP is still like the best-selling non-Nintendo handheld ever, right? So they're fine.
It was there.
Yeah, they're fine.
People played it.
Yeah. But I think we've kind of reached the end of this discussion, Brandon. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we call it an evening?
No, I think we covered. I'm just excited to see what happens. You know, hoping for something big from Nintendo at around E3 time. Hopefully at E3. And excited to see what's going on with the Switch Pro. I think by the end of the year we're gonna know what's happening. Pretty sure by the end of like August we're gonna know what's up. So
yeah. We'll see how things pan out. It is gonna be interesting to see what news we get between now and June.
For sure.
I don't know. Maybe we do get something earlier, Brandon. Maybe we see like a direct mini or something before then, or a partner showcase. Or maybe a Sakurai presents in May. There's options. There's a lot of options. But yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna get more. There's gonna probably be more smoke to this Switch Pro situation or Switch Plus situation. So that, yeah, there's more stuff. There's definitely more news coming, and not just about Switch revisions, about other things, including Zelda and maybe Metroid and other cool stuff. Maybe F-Zero. Probably not F-Zero, but I'd love to. I'll cry with the day that happens. But that's all for now, guys. Stay tuned. Make sure to check out Brandon's channel. It's linked in the description below. And that's all for now. Take care.
Bye, guys.